Chapter 851. With the help of the military, it wouldn't take long for the pharmaceutical factory to be completed. She didn't know when the factory manager that Li Xiaoyun wanted to introduce to her would take over. This time, she was really a hands-off boss. She didn't have to worry about anything. She just took the prescription and waited to make money. When Jing Yunzhao passed by the pharmaceutical factory in the car, she stared at it for a long time. Xiao Haiqing and the others were a little confused. After a while, she received a call to Xiao Haiqing, asking her to attend the audition tomorrow. It seemed that Shintong had already mentioned it to the director after they left. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been so quick. Haiqing, if you become popular, you must give me more autographs. I can give them to my roommates and make them jealous. Suchu's eyes were full of hearts. Do you think I'm such a disloyal person? If I become popular, I'll let you book me for 2 hours every day. You can visit as much as you want. Xiao Haiqing rolled her eyes and looked magnanimous. Suchu was amused. Xiao Haiqing said again, do you want me to let you touch the future superstar first? The corner of Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched as she watched the two people at the side getting into a tussle again. When the city gate is on fire, the fish in the moat will suffer. She was at the side and couldn't avoid it. Her hair was a little messy, but she couldn't hold it in for long. She joined in and killed the two of them instantly. It's boring. Yunzhao, you're too strong. I can't pull you, that's right. Cousin, you're bullying the weak. I'm a virtuous lady. You're too violent, who told you to be weak? Jing Yunzhao snorted with a smile. After a day of fun, Jing Yunzhao felt empty when she left. However, seeing that each of them had their own fulfilling lives, she felt a little satisfied. On the second night, Jing Yunzhao received another call from Xiao Haiqing. As expected, the role of Xian Han was accepted by her. However, Xiao Haiqing's attitude was a lot more serious. She told Jing Yunzhao everything that happened during the audition. Although Xian Han's role was not the first or second female lead, it was still very important. After all, she was the military advisor of the villains. In addition, she had met the male lead before and had a very exciting experience. Therefore, many B-list and C-list celebrities wanted to fight for the role. If it weren't for Shintong's introduction, she wouldn't have been qualified to audition at all. Moreover, because of Shintong, the director was more lenient towards her. Overall, his evaluation was, her image and temperament match. Although her acting is a little immature, it's enough to hone it a little. She had that kind of energy that you couldn't find in other actors. Of course, the director was more than happy to do so. Jing Yunzhao thought for a while and decided not to read at night. Instead, he began to mess around on the internet. What is this? Official fan club. Jing Air, do you have a fever? Hua Tianxian reached out and touched her head. She looked as if she had seen a ghost. As soon as she said that, Yao Baobao and Ren Xingyue immediately jumped over and stared at the computer screen in shock. In their hearts, although Jing Yunzhao was a woman, she walked the path of a domineering CEO. Suddenly, she started to chase after celebrities. This wasn't right. Jing Yunzhao pushed her hand away. She was in a good mood. What do you think the name of the fan club should be? The artist should be called Xiao Haiqing. I thought for a long time and couldn't think of a suitable one. I must be dreaming. Yao Baobao licked her lips. Xiao Haiqing. Who is that? I've never heard of such an artist. Hua Tianxian was also stunned. She felt that Jing Yunzhao seemed to be possessed. She doesn't have any works yet, but she will have one soon. Jing Yunzhao squinted her eyes and smiled. Her gaze was extremely gentle as she murmured, what should we name it? Chapter 852. Jing Yun Zhao rested her chin on her hand, her face serious as she pondered. In front of her was a piece of paper with elegant handwriting engraved on it. Hua Tianxian reached out to take the piece of paper and took a look. She was even more taken aback as she felt a chill run down her spine. Her mouth twitched as she swallowed her saliva and said to Ren Xingyu, "Why don't we go outside and invite a quack to exorcise the evil?" This piece of paper was filled with the names of some of the fans. Beside it was a list with the nicknames of other celebrities' fans. It was obvious that Jing Yun Zhao had specially gone to investigate. The names on the paper were very common, such as Yuan Xiao, Hami, Sponge, Qing Si, Yun Zhao. "Is this Xiao Haiqing your friend?" Ren Xingyu asked after some thought. Jing Yun Zhao nodded. Hua Tianxian and Ren Xingyu looked at each other. After a while, Hua Tianxian asked, "How long have you two known each other?" "More than 3 years. Jing Yun Zhao answered honestly. Although the two of them weren't close during the first semester of high school, they were still acquaintances. An enlightened expression appeared on celestial immortal Hua's face. "No wonder. Your friend is quite lucky." As she said that, Hua Tianxian felt a little envious. They hadn't known Jing Yun Zhao for a long time. It was impossible for them to be like Xiao Haiqing. She had never thought about it. However, when she saw Jing Yun Zhao's reaction, she felt a little sad. She had a lot of friends. It could even be said that she had friends everywhere. Since she was young, she had been surrounded by all kinds of people. She was like the main character in the crowd. No one had ever yelled at her or expressed their dissatisfaction. It could be said that she felt that her world was smooth sailing. However, she wasn't stupid. She could share good times with friends, but she couldn't share weal and woe with them. Instead of calling them friends, they were more like followers. Almost none of them had looked at her with their own interests in mind. The people around her had their own confidants, but she definitely wasn't the one they would pour their hearts out for. If she wanted to have fun, she could gather dozens of people with just a call. However, if she wanted to talk about personal matters, the answer would be 0. Jing, I think Yuan Xiao is better. It's cute and delicious. It's easier to call it. Yao Bao had already joined in. But I think Qing Si is more meaningful. Jing Yun Zhao hesitated. That's right. Is this your friend? I thought she would be like the great deity. Yao Bao pointed at the photo Jing Yun Zhao uploaded and looked at it carefully. This photo was taken early in the morning in a secluded park when she was teaching Haiqing and the others martial arts. In the photo, Xiao Haiqing was wearing a neat sportswear, but it showed off her good figure. She looked refreshed and energetic. There was even a sunrise behind her back. It looked very artistic. Hua Tianxian also looked at it and was slightly stunned. She looks pretty good. She nodded reluctantly and praised her. Her skin was very good, her eyes were very bright, her nose was high, and she looked very elegant. She could be strong or weak at the same time. In the photo, she had short hair and looked a little heroic. However, she had a pair of peach blossom eyes. If she had long hair, she would definitely be very feminine. Jing Yun Zhao pursed his lips and agreed. Hua Tianxian continued, I think Qing Si is better. Qing Si is very complicated and has a good meaning. It means that she will have a lot of fans in the future. Also, it is very difficult to cut off Qing Si. It means that she will have a good relationship with her fans in the future. You think it's good too? Then let's do it. Jing Yunzhao's eyes lit up. She had created a fan club that only had her as of now. Chapter 853. Seeing how excited Jing Yunzhao was, the three of them were also curious about the role Xiao Haiqing had accepted. After all, the entertainment industry was not a place where people could easily survive. Although Xiao Haiqing was good-looking, the entertainment industry had no shortage of beauties. However, Jing Yunzhao had a secretive look on his face. He said that he would reveal it to the public after the filming officially began. Seeing his childish look, Hua Tianxian rolled her eyes. She finally knew that there were only two people in the world who could change Jing Yunzhao. One was her boyfriend, who looked like he was not to be trifled with, and the other was her best friend, Xiao Haiqing. Unfortunately, she, Heavenly Fairy Hua, was not one of them. Although she was the daughter of the Hua family and didn't care about this at all, why did it make her feel so jealous? Ever since the backup team was established, Jing Yunzhao, as her only fan, had one more thing to do regularly, which was to post photos of Xiao Haiqing's daily life. Xiao Haiqing was confused about Jing Yunzhao's behavior in the beginning. However, she couldn't refuse Jing Yunzhao at all. Therefore, when Jing Yunzhao asked, Xiao Haiqing crazily took more than 100 selfies in one day and sent them all with an attitude of asking for praise. The backup team's name was Qingxi. Jing Yunzhao also gave himself a nickname, Yunxiao. In addition to Xiao Haiqing's photos, she would occasionally post some beauty tips, various kinds of wine, flowers, and so on, which attracted some tourists. Although people didn't know where Xiao Haiqing came from, the photos were beautiful, her daily life was full of love, and the beauty tips were very effective. It attracted some wild fans who came to cheer every day. While Jing Yunzhao's days of chasing after celebrities began, he didn't forget about Xinxi. The private detectives that he had previously organized were all dispatched. Inside a rented room, there were about 8 to 9 people. Some were staring at their computers, while others were listening to the sounds coming from their devices. They were all focused on their work. When Jing Yunzhao walked in, their attitudes immediately changed as they greeted her. "How is it?" Jing Yunzhao went straight to the point. "Qiangzi and Baigo have been following her for 2 weeks, but this Mrs. Su is still very normal. Sometimes she doesn't go out for a whole day. If she goes out, she goes to some jewelry stores or brand stores. Her social circle is very simple, and she is only a rich lady. She occasionally attends some banquets, and the photos are all like this." As he spoke, he handed a stack of photos over. It was Xinxi in the photo. Although she was old, she was very beautiful and somewhat resembled Xintong. Every photo was extremely beautiful. Almost all of them had the same expression on their faces, with a smile on their lips. They looked very well-mannered. "Boss, are we still following her?" the person beside him asked. Of these people, some were sent by Hua Zhe. They would follow her in the future and help her deal with some trivial matters. Of course, the trivial matters that Hua Zhe mentioned were mostly threats and threats. Among them, some were good at stalking, some were good at driving, and some were quick-witted. Most of them had some skills. There were also 2 computer experts that she had poached from a university. These 2 were brothers. One was called Song Wen, and the other was Song Wu. Their family background was not very good, and they were very poor. "Song Wen, how much information do you have on her?" Jing Yunzhao asked again. "Almost. But boss, her identity is not to be trifled with." Song Wen was a little hesitant. Seeing that Jing Yunzhao's expression didn't change, he said, "Xinxi is 46 years old this year. Her family is not very good since she was a child. After high school, she worked in an ordinary factory for a few years. Then her younger sister, Xintong, became famous. She resigned and became an assistant." Chapter 854. But I hacked the information of the entertainment company that Shintong worked for and found that her assistant was another person, who is now very famous, so I guess she was just a person who took money but didn't do anything. During the years when Shintong was popular, Shinchi's identity was relatively simple, but one day, she suddenly married Su Yuantek. This Su Yuantek's identity is very powerful. He was a very promising crown prince and had a high position in politics. It stands to reason that the two of them shouldn't have interacted at all. This is not the point. The point is that according to the hospital, Shinchi gave birth about 7 months after they got married, and it was not a premature birth, which means they got married with a baby. By the way, I said she was not to be trifled with because Shinchi's husband, Su Yuantek, is now the leader of the capital. Song Wen was also very surprised. Why did Jing Yunzhao ask them to investigate this person? For this purpose, they even hacked the police station's website. Fortunately, the two brothers were very capable, so they escaped unscathed and were not even found out. Jing Yunzhao was surprised. Su Yuantek was the eldest son of the old man, and she didn't expect him to be so successful. Didn't you find anything else? Something bad? Jing Yunzhao frowned. Yes. On the other side, Song Wu said, I found a number that was dialed from Mrs. Su's mobile phone. I found that every time the owner of the number picked up the phone, he would make some calls. Most of the people who answered the phone have a criminal record, and one of them is currently in the mental hospital and has a record of taking drugs. Jing Yunzhao froze for a moment. Mental hospital. Do you have photos of those people? Jing Yunzhao suddenly thought of something and asked quickly. Song Wu nodded. There were about 5 or 6 people, but Jing Yunzhao only saw one of them, the one who was sent to the mental hospital. This person was the one who attacked Shintong in the beauty salon that day. Jing Yunzhao curled the corner of her mouth and snorted coldly. She thought that Shinchi was really so innocent, but it seemed that was not the case. Jing Yunzhao stared at the information and then turned to Su Yuantek's photos. She thought for a while and said, Can you find out where Su Yuantek often goes? Based on her relationship with Su Yuantek, it was reasonable for her to meet Su Yuantek. Yes, but we don't have enough people. Do you want us to call Mrs. Su's people back? Song said again. Jing Yunzhao nodded. As long as she knew that Mrs. Su's wife was dirty, she didn't need to care. If Shinchi could do something to her sister, then the peace between her and Su Xianlan could naturally be an illusion. In this way, she had a motive to do something to her. After all, she was similar to Su Xianlan, and she was with Su Xianlan. If Shinchi thought that she was Su Xianlan's daughter, she might not be able to tolerate it. However, Jing Yunzhao was also a little embarrassed. Shinchi was Su Xianlan's daughter-in-law, and she didn't want to make things difficult for the old man. Jing Yunzhao arranged the work of several people and then went to Su Xianlan's place. As usual, the old man did not seem to have a good attitude on his face, but he was always considerate of her. This house was filled with a warm feeling, especially where she lived. Even though she basically did not stay overnight, there was not a speck of dust in the house. Seeing that Su Xianlan was so concerned about Shinchi, she felt even more embarrassed to ask about it. Su Xianlan was good to her, but Shinchi was his daughter-in-law after all. She relied on her face, which was similar to Su Xianlan's daughter, to gain many benefits from Su Xianlan. She didn't want to talk about those things that made him upset. Chapter 855. Jing Yunzhao seemed to have a lot on her mind. Old man Su snorted and said that she was mischievous and gave her a knock on the head. Just as she was hesitating, another person appeared in the villa. Li Xiaoyun came in with a gift box. The box was filled with medicinal herbs that he had collected from somewhere. Old man Su took it happily, his eyes shining. These herbs are not cheap, Jing Yunzhao reminded him. Old Man Su was too impolite when he accepted the gift. You brat, you've already become someone else's. What's wrong with me accepting some gifts? Old Man Su glared and asked Su Xingyuan to put away the things as if Jing Yunzhao would fight with him. Yeah, you're mine now. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and looked at her ambiguously. Don't you need to train today? Jing Yunzhao looked at Old Man Su and asked. Li Xiaoyun sat beside her and reached over the back of the sofa to stroke her hair. He didn't touch her too much, but his actions were very intimate. I miss you. Jing Yunzhao's face instantly turned red. Old Man Su is still here, Old Man Su is experienced. Li Xiaoyun was very straightforward. Old Man Su glared at Li Xiaoyun and muttered, this brat is still young. If you can bear it, then bear with it. If you can't, then find someone else. If Li Xiaoyun hadn't given her good medicinal herbs, his tone would have been different. However, after hearing Elder Su's words, Jing Yunzhao smiled. Li Xiaoyun also didn't show any weakness. Elder Su, among the juniors there aren't many who have the ability to snatch someone from my hands. Plus, Xiao doesn't like them either. The goods have already been sold, they can't be replaced in this lifetime. Old Man Su's beard twitched. How could he not know? Among his peers, Li Xiaoyun was the best. He was capable and had a calm personality. There were indeed many outstanding young men. However, if they offended Li Xiaoyun, those children would be instantly turned into dregs. Let's not talk about his grandfather. Let's talk about Li Xiaoyun himself. Outsiders might not know, but he knew very well that he had a group of elites under him. Any one of them would have a frightening background, and all of them would listen to Li Xiaoyun. If it wasn't for the difference in age and seniority, Li Xiaoyun wouldn't have to be so polite to him. Speaking of which, he had seen this kid before. His eyes were in the sky, and his character was aloof and arrogant. He was completely a smiling tiger. Now that he was so obedient and sensible in front of him, it was all thanks to Jing Yunzhao's face. You're saying that the brat is a commodity. Li Clan's brat, you're looking down on me too much. However, Old Master Su didn't care about those so-called abilities or background at all. Li Xiaoyun narrowed his eyes and laughed self-mockingly. Elder Su, no matter how you look at it, the goods are mine, right? Moreover, I haven't finished my words just now. Among the juniors there's no one who can compare to me. However, among the women in the world, there's no one who can compare to Ah Zhao. Speaking of which, I'm taking advantage of you. You're the elder that Ah Zhao values the most. In order for her to continue doting on me, you have to take care of me a little. He was blatantly trying to curry favor. When Jing Yunzhao heard this, she felt that it was mushy and her teeth were about to fall out. Elder Su was also surprised for a moment. Then, his old face turned red and he said in a serious tone, "You're not bad. The brat isn't the kind of person who's fickle. If you treat her well, you'll be rewarded." The corner of Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched violently. Based on the old man's words, it seemed that she was so domineering that she was extremely dissatisfied with Li Xiaoyun's pickiness. Elder Su is right. Li Xiaoyun smiled and nodded in agreement. Chapter 856. This pair of old and young was like a crosstalk, making Jing Yunzhao feel that her skin was still too thin. If she had half of Li Xiaoyun's, she wouldn't be in a situation where her face and ears turned red after being teased a little. Li Xiaoyun accompanied Old Man Su to play 2 rounds of chess. The old man's heart had already flown to the medicinal herbs, so he didn't have any other thoughts. He lost miserably and decided to just go and research the medicinal herbs in a huff. The words that Jing Yunzhao had originally prepared didn't even have the chance to say. You wanted to say something but stopped. What happened? Li Xiaoyun asked as soon as the old man left. I originally wanted to see the old man's eldest son, but I don't know how to tell him, Jing Yunzhao said. After hearing what Shenxi said, she felt that Shenxi was deliberately avoiding her. If she didn't want her to avoid it, she could only start with the eldest son of the Su family. Su Yuantek. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows, and his face was a little dignified. He's a very scheming person. If he wasn't in politics, the most suitable profession for him would be politics. Black and white seemed to be two extremes, but sometimes, they were just different approaches to the same goal. When Jing Yunzhao heard this, she was shocked. I heard from Uncle Xing Yuan that Elder Su's two sons are very filial and talented, of course. He's protective of his own family, just like how I'm protective of you. Li Xiaoyun didn't forget to say a few good words. Compared to before, Jing Yunzhao was a little immune. The corner of her mouth rose slightly, and her expression didn't change. She continued, then can you tell me more about Su Yuantek? Jing Yunzhao's voice was gentle, which was very good for Li Xiaoyun. The genes of the Su family are relatively strong. Old Master Su's 3 children are all famous geniuses. The eldest, Su Yuantek, is the most outstanding one. The Su family has a clean background, but Su Yuantek doesn't like to make medicine. Since he became a politician, he's ruthless to his opponents. You should know a thing or two about Su Xianlong, right? Back then, when Su Xianlong disappeared, Su Yuantek was only about 30 years old. When he heard the news, he was furious and completely crippled Li Tianyi's legs, which could have been recovered. Later, he killed Li Tianyi's younger brother. The Li family is prosperous now, but one of his sons is dead and the other is injured. Old man Li is very angry. Although there is no evidence, anyone with a discerning eye knows. Moreover, he has been at odds with the Li family all these years. The few times the Li family fell were all because of him, Li Xiaoyun said in detail. They were originally in-laws, but now they were enemies. Then it seems that he really dotes on his sister, Su Xianlong. Jing Yunzhao sighed. It's more than just doting. You can also see what kind of personality old man Su has. He was even worse in the past. When he was making medicine, he didn't care about anything. He wasn't a good husband or father at all. Su Yuantek practically raised Su Xianlong by her elder brother. He was like a father and a brother. He simply loved his sister more than his life. I heard that Su Xianlong was a nightmare in many people's hearts at that time because Su Yuantek was very protective of his sister. A few people who wanted to touch Su Xianlong were taught a terrible lesson by him. When Li Xiaoyun said this, there was a hint of admiration in his eyes. You're not the same age as them. How do you know so much? Jing Yunzhao suddenly asked. I've dealt with them before, but I'm not very familiar with them. Even so, I should check according to the rules, Li Xiaoyun said bluntly. Jing Yunzhao nodded in understanding. With Li Xiaoyun's background, he must have encountered a lot of things around him. Naturally, his vigilance would not be lower than hers. However, after hearing what he said, she had some admiration for Su Yuantek instead of fear. Chapter 857. Jing Yunzhao sank into the sofa. Li Xiaoyun pulled her into his arms and said, Tell me, why do you suddenly want to see Su Yuantek? Mr. Su kicked his 2 sons out of the house. You don't want to see him because of him, do you? Li Xiaoyun's arms were extremely warm and relaxed. Jing Yunzhao pushed him twice and didn't resist. She blushed and said, Su Yuantek's wife, Shenxi, seems to be avoiding me and Mr. Su on purpose. So, I want to find an opportunity to visit the Su family openly and get to know this Shenxi. The more the other party didn't want her to appear, the more she wanted to appear in front of her. Shenxi. Li Xiaoyun smiled faintly and said, "That woman is lucky. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to marry someone like Su Yuantek." When Su Yuantek was young, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was favored by the heavens. However, he married a woman who had nothing but a pretty face. "What do you mean?" Jing Yunzhao was instantly interested. Back then, Su Yuantek was in someone's way. During a drinking party, he was drugged and accidentally slept with a woman. That woman is now Mrs. Su. Do you understand? Li Xiaoyun said. Are you sure? Mr. Su is a master pharmacist. Even if Su Yuantek didn't inherit the family business, he should have some ability to guard himself. How could he have been drugged? Jing Yunzhao didn't understand at all. I was also curious. The reason is actually very simple. After all, Su Yuantek was still young and somewhat arrogant in the field of medicine. He thought that he wouldn't be framed like this. However, the other party used a new kind of medicine and he couldn't avoid it. Fortunately, Su Yuantek, who was also drugged at that time, woke up early. Otherwise, his reputation would have been damaged and it would have hindered his political career. Li Xiaoyun continued to explain. Jing Yunzhao was speechless. She had also found out a lot of things with her own ability, but it was not as detailed as what Li Xiaoyun had casually said. You don't have to be discouraged. This information came from the people who were at the same drinking party and knew the situation. I only know so much by coincidence. Li Xiaoyun did not forget to comfort him. Jing Yunzhao was not disappointed. After all, her information gathering group had just been established, and it was already doing well. After listening to Li Xiaoyun, Jing Yunzhao felt that Shenxi was indeed a little hypocritical. In the photos she took, Shenxi looked especially noble, as if she was born with it. She did not show any inappropriate expression at all. No matter how perfect a person was, they should have emotions, but she only had one. You know so much. According to your opinion, how should I meet Su Yuantek? Jing Yunzhao asked deliberately. Li Xiaoyun's fingers tapped on his leg regularly. With your identity and that of Su Lao, you can meet him at any time. What's more, you look a little similar to Su Xianlan. However, if your target is Shenxi, then wait a little longer. In more than a month, there will be a business meeting. At that time, the pharmaceutical factory will be able to start production. Su Yuantek has already investigated the pharmaceutical factory. At that time, it will be appropriate for you to meet him as the owner of the pharmaceutical factory. Jing Yunzhao also understood in her heart. If she used someone else as her backer to meet Su Yuantek, it would seem that she had no confidence. However, with the pharmaceutical factory, it would be different. At that time, it would be open and above board. Moreover, as Su Yuantek's wife, Shenxi would definitely be present at that time. She would not be able to hide. Jing Yunzhao also nodded. Ah, Zhao, I've said so much. My mouth is dry. Can you help me moisten it? In the blink of an eye, Li Xiaoyun suddenly lost his composure. It was inevitable for couples to have some intimate contact. However, she always kept a distance, so except for that time in the car, she did not let Li Xiaoyun have his way. However, now that he said that, the atmosphere was a little ambiguous. Her whole body was curled up in his arms, and it seemed a little natural. Chapter 858. The faint smell of sandalwood from Li Xiaoyun's body filled the tip of her nose. His warm breath tugged at her heartstrings, causing her heart to beat faster. Jing Yunzhao's slightly cold face showed a hint of redness, looking at her with a hint of seduction. Li Xiaoyun's gaze was gentle, his eyes were like ink, as if he wanted to soak the woman in front of him, instantly oppressing her. Their breaths intertwined, as if at that moment, the world was old. The heavy breathing made her blush. The weather in November had already turned cold, but Jing Yunzhao felt that the surrounding air was unbearably hot. From deep to shallow, after an unknown amount of time, Jing Yunzhao's eyes drifted, looking to the side. "Ah Zhao, your taste is very sweet," Li Xiaoyun said slowly. In an instant, Jing Yunzhao became more and more like a cooked shrimp. "You're not bad either." She pretended to be calm and said. The corner of Li Xiaoyun's mouth raised, and he could see Jing Yunzhao's embarrassment. Suddenly, he pulled her hand to his chest. "You're a medical student, so you can feel my heartbeat, right? Ah Zhao, it's been stimulated by you, and it seems like it's going to come out. I can't control it now, what should I do?" He seemed serious, but his words were sweet. Jing Yunzhao had never liked sweet things, but at this moment, a similar feeling arose in her heart. It turned out that some words from other people were mushy and exaggerated, but from the mouth of the person she liked, it was tender and sweet. Their eyes met, and Li Xiaoyun suddenly leaned over, and she suddenly felt dizzy. However, Jing Yunzhao was deeply afraid that old Master Su or Uncle Su would suddenly appear, so she was very nervous. Even if she was confused, it didn't take long for her to break free from Li Xiaoyun's side. "It's getting late, you should go back early. Be careful on the road." She seemed serious, but she didn't seem to know where to put her hands. Li Xiaoyun chuckled. She had always been calm, but in the end, she was still a little girl. She tidied up her wrinkled clothes, stood up, and said, "Zhao, are you going back on your words after taking advantage of him? You're chasing me away so quickly." Hearing him say that, Jing Yunzhao's face relaxed, and she smiled with a slight blush. "Do you want to pay for this piece of tofu?" "Humph, is that enough?" As he spoke, he flipped a coin. "It's enough, but my tofu only has one customer, and that's you. So next time, don't wait too long. Otherwise, the tofu will break into pieces." Li Xiaoyun put the coin into his pocket and sighed. He was very engrossed in his act. His face was so beautiful that it could cause the downfall of a country and its people. His temperament was not something an ordinary rich young master could compare to, but he just had to play such a common joke with her. However, Li Xiaoyun had always been able to control himself. Although he looked childish at this moment, it was inexplicably heartwarming. After sending Li Xiaoyun away, Jing Yunzhao stayed in this house for the night. Her mood became more and more cheerful. The speed of absorbing the spirit jades in the space seemed to have sped up a lot because of her state of mind. More than half of the spirit jade had been absorbed, but the more it absorbed, the slower it became. It was as if the memories were about to reach saturation. Jing Yunzhao was not in a hurry. After all, her current medical skills were probably unparalleled. She had enough time to learn everything that the ancestor had left behind. Since the incident with the poisoned wine, Shenxi had been very quiet. She didn't know if she was deliberately restraining herself. Even Shentong felt as if the previous incident had never happened. Everything had returned to normal. However, the estrangement in her heart towards Shenxi, this big sister, could not be eliminated. Shenxi did not move, and Jing Yunzhao did not intend to take the initiative to provoke her for the time being. She began to put her time into the work of the pharmaceutical factory and the immortal crane hole. Chapter 859. When she went to Immortal Crane Hall again, that Grandma Yu Fu was also there. After seeing her, her attitude was obviously more courteous than last time, and it didn't seem like she was chatting with a junior. Although Jing Yunzhao didn't understand the relationship between the older generation, she knew that this Grandma Yu Fu must be treating her like this because of Elder Su. Immortal Crane Hall was very big, and many of the rules of ancient times were preserved. There were 5 doctors in the clinic, and 20 to 30 medicine apprentices. After gathering everyone, Jing Yunzhao stood beside the old woman, and Grandma Yu Fu said, "From today onwards, she will occasionally come over to take care of some illnesses. If you have any illness that you can't solve, just hand it over to little Dr. Jing." The faces of the 5 doctors in charge were filled with astonishment and suspicion as they carefully stared at Jing Yunzhao. Her face was tender, and she didn't look like an old lady who was dressed up like this or had a chance to take care of her health. So, she was just a little girl, right? Their immortal crane hall was spread all over the world, and now it was indeed in dire straits, but its reputation was also very good. Moreover, the doctors here were all taught by their masters, and since young, they had followed their masters to pick up medicine and treat illnesses. They were influenced by what they saw and heard, and there were some who finished their apprenticeship at the age of 20, but their abilities were average, and they needed to continue practicing. How could they treat difficult and complicated illnesses that others couldn't treat? Dr. Yu, her surname is Jing, could it be that she is related to Immortal Crane Hall? An old man asked. Nope. Grandma Yu Fu was direct, and said, little Dr. Jing's medical skills have already finished her apprenticeship, and she also has some experience. In the future, you can interact and guide each other in order to improve your medical skills. However, she is still a student, so she can't come for much time, just connect with each other. After saying that, the old woman arranged for 2 medicine apprentices to help her before leaving. Once Yu Fu left, everyone looked at each other. Sigh. An old doctor sighed, and bowed his body as he left with a disappointed expression. How glorious was Immortal Crane Hall in the past. It was respected by all the medical families and had countless medicinal herb bases. It never lacked resources and had tens of millions of apprentices every year. However, after its decline, those apprentices either changed professions or went to study Western medicine. Even the medicinal herb fields had become the property of others. The only thing left was the red-crowned Crane Hall and a few stubborn old men. Of course, the number of doctors who were loyal to Immortal Crane Hall was not limited to these. However, the Jing clan's bloodline was broken, and some medical books and skills were lost. The doctors had nothing to learn, and without a leader, they naturally went to establish their own clans or join other clans. Currently, the medicine hall was indeed lacking in physicians. However, he didn't expect that even a little girl would be able to perform. It was really lamentable. The old physicians all had similar thoughts. They all had good characters and were well educated, so they didn't say anything unpleasant. However, it was difficult for them to communicate and guide a little girl. Dr. Jing, these are the patients who are more difficult to deal with recently. They are all here for a follow-up consultation today. The little medical apprentice didn't know much, but he had an inexplicable admiration for Jing Yunzhao. There were a few patient records in front of him. They were sent over from the 5 doctors. Although the 5 physicians were putting on airs, they still didn't want to let Jing Yunzhao, this young man, mess around. Thus, they wanted to watch the show and show her their strength. Dozens of them are all difficult to deal with. Jing Yunzhao raised her eyebrows, somewhat surprised. The little medical apprentice also didn't know much. The other physician said that if you want to learn how to run, you must first learn how to walk, step by step. Moreover, although these people's conditions aren't difficult to deal with, they are very complicated and not easy to treat. Chapter 860. As soon as Jing Yunzhao heard the words of the little medical assistant, she knew that she was being despised. But it was no wonder. Her appearance was indeed not very trustworthy. In the past, if it weren't for old Master Su's support, those patients who didn't know her wouldn't let her treat them at all. However, she couldn't always rely on old Master Su's reputation. She was no longer a novice now. She had enough confidence and ability. Jing Yunzhao restrained her temper and patiently looked at the cases of these people and the results of several follow-up visits. The inside of the medicine hall was divided into a few compartments using screens. The doctors were all seated inside. Once the celestial crane hall opened its doors, patients came in one after another and were assigned by the half-baked apprentices according to their conditions and priorities. The patients Jing Yunzhao was responsible for today were all old patients, and there were even more than 10 of them. Thus, it seemed a little strange. Other doctors had at most 1 or 2 people in line. After all, the patients didn't come together. On the other hand, Jing Yunzhao was one of the dozens of patients who had already made an appointment. Even though they didn't make an appointment at the same time, many patients would rather be early than late. Thus, many of them gathered together. Now that they saw her, they felt a little uncomfortable. As long as it's not Dr. Wang who treats me. Why is there a new medical apprentice today? Suddenly, a patient said angrily. She's our new young doctor, Jing. The little medical assistant quickly explained. The other party was not happy. You said she's a young doctor. How good can she be? The Mingyi hospital next door doesn't have such a doctor. Mingyi hospital was very big. There were many branches, and the building was getting more and more magnificent. Although it was a regular hospital, many people were not satisfied with the doctors because most of them were not very humane. They relied on medical equipment to say a few words, and the money would disappear like flowing water. Therefore, many people were not willing to go there. That's right. There aren't many people in the old doctors next door. Why do we have to line up with this young doctor? Is there something wrong with my condition? Don't you want to treat me? In an instant, there was a lively discussion. Everyone was lining up, but no one came forward. The other old doctors didn't care either. The apprentices were also dissatisfied with Jing Yunzhao. Even though the little medical apprentices were innocent and ignorant, they couldn't control themselves in this kind of situation. Each and every one of them panicked. In addition, there were also people who maintained the order of the medicine hall. However, they were all motionless as if they had eaten lead medicine. Jing Yunzhao knew that if she couldn't pass this test or needed someone else to help her, she wouldn't be able to do anything in the future. He stood up and walked to the queue. He glanced at the crowd and finally looked at one of the women. He said, according to the medical records, your eyes have been like this for a few weeks, right? The other party was stunned for a moment before nodding his head. The angle of this woman's pupils was a little strange. She couldn't look directly at others. The whites of her eyes were a little red, and her complexion didn't look too good. In her opinion, there was a reason for all illnesses. If a person paid attention to their health, lived a regular life, and controlled their emotions well, the possibility of getting sick would be very low. I only need to do it once to cure your eyes. I wonder if you're willing to give it a try. Jing Yunzhao continued. It was useless to say anything more. He still needed her to prove that her age was not a problem for his medical skills. The woman was surprised and asked subconsciously, how? Chapter 861. After the woman finished speaking, she was also a little uneasy. After all, the doctor in front of her was too young. If something happened during the treatment, she would be the one to suffer. However, if this eye were to continue, she would really go crazy. Her marriage was already in trouble, and now, because of this eye, it was going to be completely ruined. Before your eyes had problems, you should have encountered some big changes, right? Jing Yunzhao saw that she was not very resistant, so he reached out to take her pulse and said casually. When she said this, she looked more like a charlatan. Yes, yes. The woman hesitated for a moment. Her mother-in-law felt that she could not give birth, so she secretly asked her husband to go on blind dates. At that time, her mother-in-law quarreled with her. The more she thought about it, the more sad and angry she became. However, this was a family matter. It should have nothing to do with her illness, right? This is not a problem with your eyes. To be exact, it should be other problems from your eyes. If I'm not wrong, you should be in a bad mood before you fell ill, and you were very angry. Because of your emotions, your anger hurt your liver. The liver injury caused chi stagnation and blood stasis. Because of depression, the liver fire became hot, so it rushed to the leader, causing the abnormality in your eyes. Jing Yunzhao was very detailed, but also followed a principle. Some things were more mysterious and credible the more they were not understood. The woman nodded. You're right. At that time, I had a big quarrel with my family, and then there was a problem. There are two ways to treat the illness. The first is to use the prescription prescribed by the previous doctor, but the treatment is slow. The other is to use both methods. I will use acupuncture to dredge your blood. There are no risks or side effects. It can immediately cure the problem of your eyes, but to avoid relapse, you have to take the medicine I prescribed. It can calm your liver qi and hides yang energy. However, you don't have to take the medicine for a long time. 3 days is enough, Jing Yunzhao said. The room opened by the previous doctor was more peaceful, and it was also a commonly used method. Her acupuncture method was a secret technique. When the woman heard this, she hesitated. It was not easy for her to go out because of her eyes. Sometimes, her husband needed to take her out to socialize, but she could not go. Her mother-in-law said that she had problems all over her body and felt that she was embarrassing. Although her husband was not happy, her mother-in-law was skillful. If this continued, it was inevitable that he would fall into her trap. What if something happens? You're still so young, I still think. The woman looked conflicted. Jing Yunzhao smiled. I am indeed young, but Immortal Crane Hall is not young. If I didn't have the ability, Immortal Crane Hall wouldn't have invited me to be the doctor in charge. The acupuncture process takes about 20 minutes. If you are still worried, you can let the person beside you accompany you. If you feel that something is wrong, you can immediately stop it. Hearing Jing Yunzhao's words, the woman's heart began to tilt. All right. I'll give it a try. The woman said. His eyes would return to normal in 20 minutes. Although he had to take medicine for 3 days, it was not a long time. Jing Yunzhao nodded and invited the woman into the inner room. The woman was still worried, so she asked another female patient to look after her. After taking off her clothes, Jing Yunzhao began to perform acupuncture. The people outside all looked up, afraid that an earth-shattering scream would suddenly come from inside. Some people even started counting down on their phones. 20 minutes was not long, and it was soon over. Why haven't you come out yet? 20 minutes have passed. Nothing will happen, right? Immediately, some people began to feel restless. Chapter 862. Everyone was a little suspicious, afraid that something bad would happen. Even the 5 old doctors were a little worried. After thinking about it, they sent a medicine boy over. However, before he went in, Jing Yunzhao had already brought him out. The acupuncture treatment time was indeed about 20 minutes, but after all, the clothes on the body had to be removed, so it was only a few minutes longer than expected. The woman followed behind Jing Yunzhao. Her expression was much better, and she even looked happy. When everyone looked at her eyes again, they were also shocked. When she went in just now, her pupils were obviously a little slanted, but now they were no different from ordinary people. Was it really cured in such a short time? Thank you, little doctor. Just now, The woman was a little embarrassed. When she went in, she was quite nervous. However, the girl's faint voice had a sense of comfort. The fragrance inside made her feel much better. She thought that it would be very painful, but she did not expect that other than the slight feeling of the silver needles touching her skin, there was no pain. You're welcome. What's cured now is just the surface. I'll write you a prescription. Go get the medicine and take it on time. Also, try to relax and not be angry, Jing Yunzhao said slowly. After saying that, he sat in front of the table and took a pen to write. This prescription was not a secret, so there was no need to deliberately avoid it. When the other doctors saw it, they were a little curious about which acupoints Jing Yunzhao had pierced. However, because of their face and because there were a lot of people at this time, it was not appropriate for them to go forward and ask directly. The handwriting surprised the woman again. When another patient went forward to take a look, they also revealed a look of shock. This handwriting did not look like it was written by an ordinary student. It looked like it had the style of a master. Of course, they did not know much about Chinese studies, but they still had a sense of aesthetics. They could not help but believe it in their hearts. The woman took the prescription and went to get the medicine. When everyone was hesitating whether to go forward, the woman who had watched Jing Yunzhao's acupuncture treatment spoke first. Little doctor, can you take a look at me first? Okay, sit down. Jing Yunzhao's expression was like an old doctor. I just gave birth. Recently, I've been restless. I feel very sad and feel like crying. I also feel like yawning. The woman said. She looked sad and absent-minded. She did not feel the joy of surpassing the child at all. Her pulse was weak and weak. She seemed to be a little impatient as she sat there, moving back and forth a few times. It's not a big problem. Jing Yunzhao comforted her and began to write the prescription. That's right. The doctor said the same thing before. He said that I just gave birth and didn't have enough blood. The woman quickly nodded. There are many types of irritability. Even though you've just given birth, it's not the type where the heart's blood isn't enough. Instead, it's the type where the fire is too strong. Recently, have you been having a lot of nightmares that make you easily wake up in the middle of the night? Do you also have constipation? The woman nodded. Then that's right. If you don't have enough heart blood, the coating on your tongue should be thin and light. On the other hand, it's different for yin deficiency and excessive fire. The coating on your tongue should be yellow and your tongue red. The prescription I gave you can nourish the yin and reduce the fire. However, I suggest that you replenish your sleep, relax your mind, and don't be too nervous. Jing Yunzhao's explanation was clear and concise, calming everyone who heard it. This woman had just given birth. She was probably too nervous about the child, so she could not sleep and eat well. She often had nightmares. In addition, the child's appearance would affect her routine, so there was a problem. Chapter 863. Jing Yunzhao prescribed a lily rhamania soup and asked the medicine boy to bring her to get the medicine. However, she was a little curious. Logically speaking, there were several different kinds of symptoms of visceral irritation, but it was not particularly difficult to distinguish them. If it was these few old doctors, they should not be wrong. However, Jing Yunzhao did not care so much now, because at this time, the people in the queue had begun to calm down. They were even faintly curious and were waiting to treat the patient. At this time, an old doctor next to her was angrily staring at his eldest disciple. He was very angry. He could not see such an obvious illness wrongly, and in the end, Jing Yunzhao pointed it out. It was really embarrassing. Fortunately, the patient did not pursue the matter, otherwise, he would have nowhere to put his face. The few old men were more complicated. They did not expect Jing Yunzhao to be so capable. They had seen the prescription that she had prescribed, and there was no problem at all. He was indeed a person with real talent and knowledge. They were not calculative people. It was a good thing for the national healer to have such an outstanding person among the younger generation. They just felt that the few of them were too stingy. Jing Yunzhao's expression was still the same, and she was not surprised. The patients came forward one by one, and they saw that every word she said was important. Some of them did acupuncture personally, and some of them used secret prescriptions, which made the 5 doctors feel more and more uncomfortable. Jing Yunzhao finished seeing dozens of patients at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and they did not find any mistakes at all. Her treatment efficiency was extremely high. Moreover, she had seen the cases of these people in advance this time, so she knew what to do. Once she finished her work, she did not just sit around, but walked around the red-crowned crane hall. After a while, she went to the medicine cabinet to familiarize herself with the situation and help to get the medicine. Once she made her move, the few old men were shocked once again. As long as it was a medicinal herb, she would find it accurately. Their medicine cabinet was not simple, and there were many medicinal herbs in it. Usually, the medicine boy would be responsible for a certain area, so the probability of mistakes was small. However, Jing Yunzhao had just arrived, and she had just looked up at the position of the medicinal herbs, and she remembered them all. Her speed of getting the medicine was much faster than the medicine boy, and her actions were accurate. Every time she grabbed, she would use a small scale to weigh it, and it was almost the same. This ability made the few of them lose their temper. "Dr. Yu, where did you find this little girl? Her ability is too astonishing. Look at her posture. I seem to be seeing the ability of the eldest miss when she was treating illnesses." To put it bluntly, even the eldest young miss back then didn't have such talent. "How old is this girl?" I asked Dr. Yu. "She's only 18 years old, but Dr. Yu said that this child was introduced by old Mr. Su." "Old Master Su? His disciple?" "That's not right. Elder Su does have medical skills, but he only likes to make medicine. He doesn't know how to save people. How could he let his disciple be a doctor?" The old men were all very curious as they chatted amongst themselves. After 2 or 3 hours, when they saw Jing Yunzhao stop to pack up, they looked at each other and went forward to ask. "Little Dr. Jing, is there anything else? I still have to go back to school, so if there's nothing else, we'll meet again next time." The other party had just called out, but Jing Yunzhao had already replied politely. After that, she lifted her feet and walked out, waving her sleeves, leaving not a single cloud behind. That back view made the old men's faces twitch. When Jing Yunzhao walked out, there was a trace of a smile on her face. These old doctors looked down on her and deliberately made fun of her. Fortunately, she was very capable, otherwise, she wouldn't be able to finish today. Moreover, she heard clearly what they said behind her back. In return, she would not be able to satisfy their curiosity today. Chapter 864. Once Jing Yunzhao left, the few old doctors behind her were so anxious that they stomped their feet. There were too many things they wanted to know, such as her acupuncture technique and the interpretation of some prescriptions. Even though they were already old, they still had a lot of gossip in their hearts. They wanted to know what was the relationship between Jing Yunzhao and old Mr. Su. Old Master Su's medicine was the best among all the pharmaceutical masters. He could bring out the limit of the medicinal properties of the herbs. Some rare varieties were even better. Unfortunately, old Master Su had not been in the capital for a long time, and his medicine was hard to find. Jing Yunzhao couldn't have come to the pharmacy too often. The curiosity in the hearts of these old doctors would probably continue for a long time. However, old Madame Yu Fu was in trouble. The few old doctors suddenly became noisy, asking her to contact Jing Yunzhao from time to time to come to work. However, old Madame Yu Fu already knew that Jing Yunzhao was a busy person and would never follow the instructions of these old doctors. In the end, she was annoyed to the point of helplessness and decided to just close the door to the backyard, not allowing anyone to enter. Jing Yunzhao went to class as usual. The campus was no longer hot, but for the sake of beauty, there were still many people who wore coats but bare their legs. Let me tell you, Senior Yu took Zhou Meijun to the dean. Maybe he can help her restore her status as a student. I don't think it's possible, right? The rumors were so strong before, and it was related to Professor Mo. The dean will definitely not give Senior Yu face. That's hard to say. Have you forgotten that he has a family background? If Senior Yu goes to his father and tells him, won't the dean take a step back? Passing by the pavilion, Jing Yunzhao heard a few girls whispering. Hearing Zhou Meijun's name, Jing Yunzhao stopped in her tracks. What were you talking about? Jing Yunzhao walked over and asked directly. The few of them raised their heads to take a look. When they saw Jing Yunzhao, their expressions became a little strange. One of the girls hurriedly said that. We were just talking about Zhou Meijun, the one who got fired because she posted randomly. I know, you don't have to be nervous. I just want to ask you, why did Senior Yu bring her to the dean? Jing Yunzhao asked calmly. Actually, we're not too sure about the details. I heard that someone saw her coming with Senior Yu. Senior Yu's father and uncle are both powerful and rich. He's a true young master of a wealthy family. His words are very useful. The girl also relaxed and explained carefully. Jing Yunzhao raised her eyebrows. She had interacted with the dean before and could tell that the dean was not the kind of person who would let people go through the back door. Zhou Meijun's student status had already been revoked, and she still wanted to come back to life. No way. Who is this Senior Yu you're talking about? Jing Yunzhao asked. He's one of the 4 famous young masters in the capital city. His name is Su Yuantek. His father is the mayor of the capital city, Su Yuantek. In our university, he's one of the most untouchable people, the girl said. Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. She did not expect Elder Su's grandson to be studying in a university, but she had never heard Elder Su mention it. Logically speaking, although this son had been kicked out of the family by Elder Su, the grandson was still part of the Su family. The older generation valued their descendants, so they should have mentioned it, right? Moreover, she remembered that even Su Xingyuan was the same. Every time he mentioned the Su family, he would refer to them as the children and grandchildren of the Su family. He completely put his grandson and son in the same category and did not seem to care at all. Senior Yu is a 4th-year student, but he doesn't come to class much. That Zhou Meijun is really lucky to have hooked up with him. This time, even if the dean doesn't help her return to school, he will definitely find a way to get her status back. Maybe she won't even get a demerit. That way, she can transfer to another good school. Chapter 865. The girl who spoke felt indignant on behalf of Jing Yunzhao. Most of the first-year students worshipped Jing Yunzhao. After all, she was the first student that Professor Mo had officially accepted. Jing Yunzhao had done something that none of the seniors had the ability to do. Moreover, she was beautiful and was recognized as the campus belle. Not only that, her pet Heidi had attracted a lot of fans. There were many people who were envious of her. However, student Jing, although you feel wronged, let's just forget about this matter. Senior Yu, that person, has a bad temper. I heard from the seniors that I know that Su Yu caused a sensation when he first entered the school. Dozens of rich young masters drove luxury cars to send him here. On the 3rd day of school, he managed to woo the campus belle. Then, a female student offended the campus belle and he found his friends to humiliate her. Not long after, she dropped out of school. Also, every time Senior Yu plays basketball, he kills everyone. It's not because he's good at it, but because no one dares to beat him. If he wins, he'll definitely take revenge in other ways that night. He's famous for being domineering. He's had at least 8 if not 10 girlfriends and countless girls he's played with. If you offend him. Anyway, you should be able to think of it. Jing Yunzhao was good-looking and Zhou Meijun couldn't compare to her. However, Suyu was famous for being protective of his girlfriends. When the time came, even if she was good-looking, he would definitely teach her a lesson first. Jing Yunzhao was shocked when she heard this evaluation. How could Elder Su's grandson be so unbearable? She felt that it shouldn't be. She had been educated by the old man all these years and naturally knew that he paid attention to character. Moreover, he often said that only good people could produce good herbs. Since that was the case, how could Suyu be so crooked? Thank you, Jing Yunzhao said before leaving. The girl's eyes lit up as they looked at her back. Jing Yunzhao looks even prettier up close. She doesn't seem to have any makeup on, but her skin is so good that even her pores can't be seen. She's too good-looking, but she offended Suyu. If Suyu knew that she looked like this, I'm afraid he would take her in as a harem. Behind her, the girls sighed again. Jing Yunzhao heard this clearly, but his expression didn't change. After thinking for a moment, he called Uncle Xing Yuan. Uncle Su, where's the old man? Jing Yunzhao asked as soon as the call was connected. Master is taking his afternoon nap. Do you need me to wake him up? Although Su Xingyuan was an elder, he was still very polite. Jing Yunzhao hurriedly stopped her and asked, I'm looking for you. I just heard a classmate mention a Senior Yu. After asking carefully, I found out that Su Yu is the grandson of the old master. Only then did I remember that the old master hasn't mentioned him in the past 2 years. Why? You mean Su Yu? Su Xingyuan asked, then said, Master rarely cares about his son's family background, and Master Zhe hasn't cared much about the family these years. That kid was raised by Madam since he was young, and he's not close to the old master. The most important thing is that his character isn't very good. The old master and Master Zhe don't like him. No matter how much they teach him, he won't change, so they just don't care. Character isn't good. What exactly is it? Jing Yunzhao asked again. He eats, drinks, gambles, and has a lot of bad friends. He's lawless. When he was a teenager, he was personally sent to the juvenile detention center by Master Zhe. But after he came out, he still didn't change. Master Zhe felt guilty towards Madam, so he just turned a blind eye to it, Su Xingyuan said directly. Jing Yunzhao's face froze. He was really surprised. But thinking about it carefully, Su Yu's mother was Xin Shi. With Xin Shi's hypocritical personality, even the best genes would be destroyed in her hands. Chapter 866. Jing Yunzhao suddenly asked Su Yu. Su Xingyuan also felt strange and hurriedly said, Did Su Yu do something? If he provoked you, just hit him. After you hit him, no one will find trouble with you. Master Zhe won't care. He was clear about Jing Yunzhao's ability, so he was not afraid that she would be at a disadvantage. He didn't provoke me. It's just that the girl who wrongly accused me of having an improper relationship with Professor Mo was brought back by him. It seems that he wants the dean to help her deal with her student status. We haven't met yet, Jing Yunzhao said. Is that so? Then there's no need to meet. I'll call Master Zhe now. With him suppressing it, so you can't do anything. Su Xingyuan was very straightforward. Although Su Xingyuan was only Elder Su's disciple, his surname was Su. He had been by Elder Su's side since he was young and was no different from his own son. Jing Yunzhao also nodded. This way, it would save them a lot of trouble. As soon as Jing Yunzhao hung up the phone, Su Xingyuan had already contacted Su Yuantek. Su Yuantek was a little nervous when he heard Su Xingyuan's voice. He thought that something had happened to the old man, but when he heard the details, his nervousness turned into displeasure. This son of his was simply a disgrace to the Su family. The Su family had been young for generations and had strict ancestral teachings. They had never had such an unfilial son. However, he was the one who had wronged Xinxi back then. These years, he had made her live like a widow. She only had a son by her side, so it was not easy to punish him severely. Otherwise, he would have thrown him directly into prison and let him reflect for the rest of his life. He did not know why, but he did not have much affection for this son. Perhaps it was because his existence was not of his own accord, but the result of being framed by his political opponents. Moreover, the Su family had always been low-key. Even if there were no elders watching over them, they had a sense of self-awareness in their bones. However, Suyu was different. When he was young, he was arrogant and overbearing. It was not that he had not been taught, but that he had not been taught well. After all, he had to go to work and could not watch over him at all times. Why did Dad suddenly care about Suyu? I mean, how did he know that Suyu was using my name to pressure the dean? Su Yuantek's voice was calm. He asked again before hanging up the phone. The girl who Suyu wanted to help offended Professor Mo, and Master just happened to know. Su Xingyuan did not tell the truth. Su Yuantek sighed. Dad's good. Not bad, much better than before, Su Xingyuan said. He's good, he's as. Even learn. Edition, take. Su Xingyuan said yes, but in his heart, he could not help but say, he came back a long time ago. When the old man had just left, Su Yuantek found someone to secretly watch over him. But at that time, the old man was so angry that he flew into a rage. Since then, he did not dare to do it again. Although Su Yuantek was in a high position, he was still in awe of the old man. Unfortunately, the father and son were separated by an old matter. It was difficult to reconcile. Su Xingyuan was the old man's man. Regardless of the truth of his words, Su Yuantek held a high position in his heart. After hanging up the phone, he immediately contacted the school. Chapter 867. At this moment, Suyu was sitting on the sofa in the dean's office, looking at the dean with his legs crossed. The dean's face was green with anger. Zhou Meijun stood beside him, looking extremely obedient, but she was extremely happy. After being wronged for so long, she finally got back the face she had earned. Professor Mo is your elder. Although he isn't close friends with your grandfather, he still knows him. You have to give him an explanation. Moreover, since this person has already been expelled, there's no possibility of her returning. Your father also said that the woman who asked you for help didn't have a good character. Not to mention that she won't be able to return to a university, even if she's a stepdaughter, no one in the capital city will accept her. When he gets back, he'll get someone to warn the Zhou family. Even if she's a stepdaughter, she should be taught well. Su Yuantek was well connected and had a high status. Wasn't it easy for him to investigate someone? He only needed to ask around a little to find out who the girl who offended Professor Mo was. It didn't take much effort at all. As soon as he said that, Suyu stood up from the sofa with a whoosh. Zhou Meijun's face instantly turned pale. Impossible. Don't use my father to scare me. Why would he care about this? Su Yut said immediately. The dean chuckled and suppressed his anger. He's your father. Why don't you call him and ask him yourself? As the dean, he wasn't afraid of this Su Yuantech. After all, he was just a young man. However, Su Yuantech was a big tiger with a ruthless personality. If he spoiled his son too much, it would be troublesome. But now, it seemed that he had thought too much. I don't need you to tell me. I'll call him. Su Yu snorted and picked up his phone to call. However, just as he opened his mouth to say, "Dad," he felt the pressure on the other end of the phone. Do you want to die? I seem to have let you off before, right? Now you even dare to offend your grandfather's friend. If you don't want to stay in school, I'll send you to prison immediately. Su Yuantech's voice was cold and his aura was frightening. When Su Yu heard that, his face changed instantly. He was livid. Brother Su, what the dean said, is it true? Zhou Meijuan's voice trembled. Su Yu's face turned ugly. Without even looking at the president, he walked out. Zhou Meijun saw this and immediately followed after him. Brother Su, didn't you say? Speak. Say what? You didn't tell me that the person you offended was Professor Mo. Su Yu's expression was cold as he threw his phone in anger. He knew about Professor Mo. His relationship with his grandfather could not be described as bad. Instead, it could be described as subtle. They seemed to be enemies, but at the same time, friends. If he had known that the person Zhou Meijun had offended was him, he would never have gotten involved in this mess. It was true that he was the only grandson of the Su family, but he couldn't afford to offend just anyone. There were at least 3 people he had to tolerate: his grandfather, his father, and his uncle. His uncle was not at home all year round, and he was usually too lazy to care about his affairs. But his grandfather was different. He had never been good to his grandson. He had no care and love. His father had always treated his grandfather's words like an imperial edict. Therefore, he absolutely could not do anything to annoy his grandfather. Otherwise, he would not have a good life. Zhou Meijun was trembling with fear. Brother Su. Young Master Su, then I really can't go back to school. Zhou Meijun whispered. Let's forget about this. Su Yu did not take it to heart at all. After saying that, he raised his eyebrows, took out a good cigarette, and lit it. I remember you said that the person you offended was a girl who flattered the professor. What's her name? What does she look like? Chapter 868. Su Yu had been in the business for so many years. He didn't have any other skills, but he had a way with women. Women like Zhou Meijun were everywhere. Although she was fair and pretty, she could be played with as long as you spent money. Her background was not bad. She was the stepdaughter of the Zhou family, but in reality, she was just a burden. He was willing to stand up for her because he wanted to save face. He didn't want someone to be bullied with the title of Su Yu's girlfriend. He couldn't afford to lose face. However, he knew in his heart that Zhou Meijun was just using him. They were just taking what they needed. He could tolerate her using him, but he couldn't hide the truth. If she didn't hide Professor Mo's name, he wouldn't have been scolded by his father today. When he went back, he still had to ask his mother for help. There was a hint of danger in Su Yu's eyes. Zhou Meijun's heart skipped a beat. Especially when she heard him mention Jing Yunzhao, she felt even more flustered. Why aren't you saying it? Su Yu lowered his voice and asked. Meijun, you can't be thinking that you can do whatever you want just because I pamper you, right? What kind of woman can't I, Su Yu, find? I haven't settled the score with you just now. If you don't tell the truth, do you believe that I won't let you see anyone for the rest of your life? Suyu said as he rubbed the cigarette butt on Zhou Meijun's arm. In an instant, the small flame burned a hole in her clothes and touched her delicate skin. Zhou Meijun immediately took a step back, but was pulled back. At this time, she didn't dare to hide it anymore. She quickly said, She's called Jing Yunzhao. She's very beautiful. Is she prettier than you? Suyu asked with a smile. Yes. Although she didn't want to admit it, she knew that Suyu would investigate it himself. If he found out that she was lying, she wouldn't have an easy time. She complained in her heart. She thought that she could make a comeback this time. She didn't expect Suyu to not dare to provoke Professor Mo. He was just a professor. Suyu was the son of a mayor. How could he be so useless? Suyu let go. Is that so? I can't do anything to a beautiful woman. What are you standing there for? Take me to have a look. If it's really like what you said, I'll let this matter go. Otherwise, I'll throw you into the wild where there are stray dogs and let you have a good experience. Suyu's thumb gently stroked the corner of Zhou Meijun's lips, frivolous and arrogant. Zhou Meijun's body trembled. When she got close to Suyu, she heard that people who offended him would be tortured by him in private. There was once a person who was thrown to a stray dog gathering place and was bitten beyond recognition. Suyu was not a person who knew how to restrain himself. His father had power and influence. Even if he did not help him, there were countless people who indulged him and helped him commit murder. They even used countless methods to keep his secret. He hurriedly responded and led the way. Suyu's name was very famous, especially in a university. Almost everyone knew him. Wherever he passed, he saw many people calling him Senior Yu, Young Master Yu, or Young Master Su, swaggering through the streets. Jing Yunzhao stood at the classroom window and saw the person he expected to see. Since she had talked to Su Xingyuan, Uncle Su would definitely think of a way. The most direct way was to let Su Yuantek educate his son. Suyu couldn't get what he wanted, so it was inevitable that he would be angry. This anger would naturally be transferred to her. Zhou Meijun didn't want to see Jing Yunzhao, but she didn't have a choice now. She walked downstairs and glanced up, just in time to see Jing Yunzhao looking downstairs. Even though they were far apart, she was still shocked. Young Master Su, it's the one at the window. Chapter 869. When Suyu heard this, he looked up and was instantly stunned. Behind the glass was an extremely thin girl in a white shirt and denim pants. She looked very clean and the sunlight shone through the glass, accentuating her beauty. This is Jing Yunzhao. Suyu snorted softly, but a smile appeared on his face. She was indeed very beautiful, or rather, very elegant. Zhou Meiju nodded. Get away from me. Suyu raised his eyebrows, his eyes cold as he squeezed these words out of his mouth. Zhou Meijun's body trembled. She couldn't accept it. She had spent so much effort to get close to him, but in the end, she didn't get anything. She even sacrificed the opportunity to go to another school. Why? Young Master Su, Meijun, look at the one above, and then look at yourself. Do you still think you have the right to stay by my side? With your dignity, I can only reluctantly accept you, but you dare to have so many thoughts. If you can't learn to be obedient, then you have to accept your fate. I won't settle the losses you made me suffer today, but if you continue to annoy me, then don't blame me for not giving you any leeway in the future. As Suyu spoke, he threw the cigarette on the floor and extinguished it with his foot. Zhou Meijun instantly fell silent. She knew what her status was. Even if she was furious in her heart. Immediately, she left dejectedly. Suyu took out a piece of chewing gum from his pocket, chewed it a few times, and spat it out. He breathed in and smelled it. The smell was passable, and then he went upstairs. He calculated accurately. Just as the lecturer entered the classroom and was about to start the lesson, he stepped in and walked straight to her. "Follow me." He went straight to the point. Up close, Jing Yunzhao was even more good-looking. As soon as Suyu spoke, everyone in the class fell silent. Some of the students really didn't know him, but after being explained by the people next to them, they immediately understood and obediently shut their mouths. Hua Tianxian frowned and also remembered. When she came to a university, her father had shown her a photo of this boy. He said that he was the mayor's son and was studying here. He also told her that if possible, she should maintain a good relationship with Suyu. However, she forgot about it after entering the university. Moreover, she didn't like this kind of rich young master. But why was he here? And they even went to Jing Yunzhao. Other than Hua Tianxian, everyone else had different expressions. The class monitor, Han Nan, clenched his fists and looked worried, but he didn't dare to say anything. Suyu pressed down on the book in front of Jing Yunzhao. Although the lecturer frowned, he did not say anything. The corners of Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or angry. He looked up and realized that Suyu looked very similar to the Xin Shi that he had found in the information. The only difference was that Suyu had more masculinity. "Why are you looking for me?" Jing Yunzhao's voice was still cold. "You'll know when you come out with me. You can't expect me to do it in front of so many classmates, right?" Suyu mocked. "There's nothing wrong with doing it in front of your classmates." Jing Yunzhao was very direct. When Suyu heard this, he licked the corner of his lips. "You think I don't dare?" Jing Yunzhao's eyes were filled with disgust. As the grandson of Elder Su, this Suyu looked like a good-for-nothing. It was really a waste of Elder Su's character. This son of a bitch didn't learn anything at all. After Suyu finished speaking, he saw Jing Yunzhao's expression and suddenly became angry. Jing Yunzhao didn't ask who he was, so he must know his name. However, he still looked so fearless. It seemed that he wanted to deliberately provoke him. Thinking of this, he sneered and stretched his neck, wanting to immediately move his head closer. Chapter 870. Suyu's forceful kiss made everyone's jaws drop. Jing Yunzhao retreated, but Suyu reached out to grab her waist. Jing Yunzhao's temper flared up instantly. She took the textbook on the table and smashed it directly at his face. Immediately, a red mark appeared. Suyu felt the pain and restrained himself. But in the next moment, he felt his nose heat up. 2 lines of blood flowed down his nose, dripping down. "You dare to hit me?" Suyu looked furious. "Hit you? You're the one I'm hitting." Jing Yunzhao snorted coldly. She picked up another book and slapped him on the left and right sides of his face. Suyu naturally wouldn't just stand there and wait to be hit. He immediately threw out a punch. But just as he stretched out his hand, Jing Yunzhao's palm struck him with extreme pain. It was as if his wrist was about to break. His face was burning with pain. Jing Yunzhao treated it as helping the old man teach his grandson a lesson. She didn't show any mercy. The lecturer who saw this moved to the corner. Clearly, he didn't expect that Jing Yunzhao, who looked so thin and gentle, would be so vicious. However, the lecturer felt a little refreshed. Which teacher in this school didn't know Suyu? Ever since he started school, he had been on the top of the blacklist. Those teachers who had taught him in the past were all miserable. No one could control him at all. This kind of bullying student who relied on his family background could not be announced because no one dared to report it at all. Even if they did, it would be immediately deleted. Suyu was dizzy from Jing Yunzhao's slap. Hua Tianxian and the others were dumbfounded. When he stopped, she stepped out from her seat and kicked him in the stomach. Get out! When he looked again, he was already outside the classroom. Suyu tumbled and rolled on the floor before he finally got up with much difficulty. He immediately wanted to enter the house to settle the score with Jing Yunzhao, but through his swollen eyes, he could see Jing Yunzhao's cold gaze. He retreated backwards and wanted to leave behind some vicious words, but the moment he moved, his cheeks would hurt to the extreme. He might as well just cover his face and leave. Jing Yunzhao actually dared to hit him. In this life, other than his father, no one had ever hit him. As soon as Suyu left, Jing Yunzhao said, "I'm sorry, everyone. I've wasted everyone's time. Teacher, please start the lesson." As he spoke, he sat down and tidied up his things. Everything returned to normal. The students were extremely quiet. Even the teacher looked at Jing Yunzhao with a strange expression. "You're awesome. Jing Er, do you know who you just hit? It's Suyu. I don't even dare to touch that idiot." Hua Tianxian was also shocked. After offending Suyu, Jing Yunzhao's life was going to be difficult. One had to know that Suyu had many followers in this school. After all, in a place like University A, there were many rich young masters and young ladies. Many of them were at Suyu's beck and call in order to curry favor with him. Today, Suyu suffered a loss. Tomorrow, someone would avenge him. When that time came, Jing Yunzhao might not be able to deal with it. "You know him too?" Jing Yunzhao asked casually. "Oh, of course. My parents are extremely careful people. Ever since I was young, before I went to any school, they would always make a list of the people in the school. Some people can be socialized with, and some people can't be provoked." They were very clear. Hua Tianxian didn't hide anything. She knew that this kind of behavior was snobbish and snobbish. But with the title of Miss Hua and the good fortune of the Hua family, she also wanted to do what the daughters of the Hua family did. So be it. If one comes, I'll fight one. If two comes, I'll fight two. Even if he gathered the whole school to gang up on me, there's nothing to be afraid of, Jing Yunzhao said faintly. His brows were slightly furrowed, and there was no hint of uncertainty in his eyes. Chapter 871. Jing Yunzhao's heart was filled with anger. Elder Su treated her extremely well, and she also treated the old man as family. Elder Su was such a proud person, yet he actually raised such an unreliable grandson. It was simply an insult to the old man. Hua Tianxian found it strange when she heard her arrogant words. "You seem to hate Suyu. What grudge do you have against him?" The number of people who went against Jing Yunzhao wasn't small, but the number of people who could make her hate them in her heart wasn't many. "There's no grudge. It was the first time we met," Jing Yunzhao said honestly. Celestial Immortal Hua was speechless upon hearing this. Love at first sight and hatred at first sight existed in this world. Suyu looked a little pitiful after being beaten up by her for the first time. Of course, she wouldn't sympathize with him. Jing Yunzhao was the center of attention during this class. During the lecture, the teacher's gaze landed on Jing Yunzhao more than once. He even found a chance to ask a few more questions. The students' eyes were filled with curiosity. When it was time to end class, almost all of them rushed over and surrounded Jing Yunzhao. "Jing Yunzhao, what's your relationship with Suyu? Is it okay for you to beat him up like that?" Student A asked curiously. "I heard that Suyu's character isn't good. You mustn't go out alone, or it'll be dangerous." Student B was very worried. "You're not trying to attract Senior Yu's attention by beating him up like that, right? But I think you should give up. Senior Yu does have a lot of girlfriends, but he's just playing around," someone said with jealousy. The noisy chatter gave Jing Yunzhao a headache. Without saying a word, she squeezed her way out of the crowd. However, just as Jing Yunzhao escaped from the crowd's encirclement, she was once again surrounded by a few girls at the class entrance. There were nearly 10 women in front of him. Each of them was extremely beautiful, especially their figures, which were extremely exquisite and enchanting. Most of them were wearing branded clothes, and their long nails were covered with colorful perfume. Each of them had their own merits, but at this time, when they were mixed together, Jing Yunzhao only felt his nose itch, and he couldn't help but sneeze. The smell was too strong. No matter how good the perfume was, if it was too complicated, it would be no different from a low-quality product. There were some sloppy boys standing behind the women. They didn't look like they were easy to get along with. "Are you Jing Yunzhao? The one who attacked young Master Yu just now?" one of the women said domineeringly. Her eyes were fierce, as if she wanted to cut Jing Yunzhao from head to toe. "You are." Jing Yunzhao had a rough idea in his heart, but he still asked tentatively. "You have some guts to actually hit young Master Yu." The woman's attitude was arrogant. She looked at Jing Yunzhao as though she was looking at something dirty. "These people were probably the huge harem behind Su Yu, right? I've already hit him. What do you want?" Jing Yunzhao sighed and glanced at the people around him. Actually, these women were not very old. After all, they were all students of this school. They looked to be in their 20s, but perhaps because they followed Su Yu, they looked a little similar. They basically had the same face shape and very similar makeup. It was just that some of them were wearing enchanting and hot clothes, while others were pure and lovely. But no matter which one it was, they all had a strong smell of prostitution. They didn't look like students at all. When a person disregarded her dignity and tried to curry favor with a man for benefits, she was no different from a prostitute. Chapter 872. Jing Yunzhao did not restrain the disdain in his eyes, as if he did not put the people in front of him in his eyes at all. When the women saw this, they became even angrier, and one by one, they moved closer. "Junior, you're quite scheming. Do you want to use this method to get young Master Yu's attention? But aren't you looking down on us a little too much? You will soon know the consequences of making a move on young Master Yu." The woman's arrogance was strong. "See, you lost, so he needs you women to vent his anger for him. Is he a child who hasn't been weaned?" Jing Yunzhao ridiculed. When the women heard this, they were immediately angry, and said without hesitation, "Your mouth is so cheap, I think you need to be taught a lesson." As they spoke, they looked at each other and directly pounced. These people didn't know any martial arts at all. The only thing they could do to beat people up was to stretch out their hands and scratch them. The moment their fingers reached out, Jing Yunzhao fiercely pulled and flung them away. She then followed up with a sweep of her leg. Instantly, the surroundings became quiet. However, just when everyone thought that Jing Yunzhao was about to cry and howl, they heard many muffled groans from the boys. When they looked carefully, everyone was shocked. Jing Yunzhao's movements were as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water, as if it was a martial arts plot that only existed in TV dramas. The men bravely rushed forward, but were all kicked to the ground in an instant. Even if there was danger behind her, Jing Yunzhao was completely unconcerned. Her figure was confident and decisive, and was quite handsome. In just a few minutes, there were more than 20 people lying on the ground in the corridor outside the classroom. Men and women, at this time, if they were not holding their arms or stomachs, their faces were bruised and swollen as they looked at Jing Yunzhao. They simply did not have the strength to fight. After the front was quiet, Jing Yunzhao stopped, tidied up his clothes, picked up the bag on the ground, and lifted his feet to pass through the crowd. Those who came to find trouble even opened up a path, their eyes filled with fear. If these people were not present at this time, Jing Yunzhao's classmates would probably not be able to help but applaud and cheer. The men and women who came here added up to more than 20 people, so much so that not even a drop of water could trickle through the corridor. Jing Yunzhao, on the other hand, had the same expression from start to finish. When she made a move, it was frightening. She suddenly became a martial arts expert. At this moment, the students could not help but recall the scene of the previous military training. Because a few months had passed, they had even forgotten about Jing Yunzhao's astonishing methods. Now that Jing Yunzhao had left, these people supported each other and left. It was a strange scene. However, no one dared to film this scene. After all, everyone knew that Jing Yunzhao's classmates were all from extraordinary backgrounds. If the scene just now was leaked out, no matter if it was Jing Yunzhao or the person who uploaded it, they would definitely not have a good ending. Not long after, the news of these 20-plus people being beaten up by Jing Yunzhao reached the dean's ears. If it was a fight between ordinary students, the department would deal with it directly. However, it was different now. The 20-plus people who were beaten up, together with the student council, directly went to the dean and said that Jing Yunzhao was guilty of evil. "Dean, if my dad knew that I was beaten up like this in school, he would definitely be angry. Originally, he was going to donate money to the school to strengthen the teaching staff. I've lived for so long, and my parents have never laid a hand on me. Now that I've been beaten up by Jing Yunzhao, if Jing Yunzhao still stays in this school, then I'll ask my dad to come and talk to you personally, Dean." Chapter 874. After they reached a consensus, they went to the hospital to visit Suyu. In fact, Suyu only had external injuries. His face was swollen like a bun, and his stomach was bruised from Jing Yunzhao's kick. Other than that, there were no other problems. When these people arrived, they were very restrained and did not mention Jing Yunzhao's name. "You're injured too. That little bitch." Suyu gritted his teeth and immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. He was in so much pain that he grimaced. The few of them looked at each other. After a while, a rich lady walked in from outside the door. When they saw her, they immediately greeted her and retreated. Shinshi saw her son's current appearance and immediately felt extremely distressed. How did you end up like this? Who hit you?" Shinshi was furious. Although her voice was cold, she still maintained her upbringing and temperament. "Mom, be gentler. It hurts." Suyu's mouth was small, and he said through his teeth, "It was a little girl who hit me. She probably wanted to attract my attention." "You child, didn't I teach you before? If you want to interact with those uneducated wild girls, the future daughter-in-law of the Su family must be of equal social status. What if those dirty girls lead you astray?" Shinshi's voice was soft. There was no one else in the ward, so she did not restrain herself. Suyu was not surprised. "Mom, it's different. This girl is very beautiful. Besides, it's just for fun. I'm not planning to make her our daughter-in-law." "Oh right, didn't you tell Dad that I was in the hospital? Why didn't he come?" "I did. I don't know why he..." Before he finished speaking, two burly men suddenly appeared in front of him. Su Yuantek walked in and without saying anything, he ordered the two men to carry Suyu out. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Yuanza. Our son is injured." Shinshi was anxious and quickly grabbed Su Yuantek's arm. Su Yuantek glanced at her coldly and threw her out. A loving mother leads to a useless son. I think the punishment last time was too light, that's why he didn't learn his lesson. I've already arranged for someone to send him to Heizhou to gain experience. If he comes back alive, we'll forget about this matter. But if he dies, we'll take it that he's not part of the Su family. Su Yuantek was furious. He wished he could strangle his son to death. He was not a kind person himself, but he only targeted his enemies. He would never act recklessly. Over the years, he had indeed killed many people, but he could say that all of them deserved to die. Killing one person could save countless innocent people, but what did his son do? He knew how to bully others since he was in elementary school. When he was in his teens, he began to harm other people's daughters. He didn't listen to reason, and his mistakes became more and more serious. At noon today, he called the dean. In the afternoon, the dean told him that Su Yu had failed to force himself on a female student and had been beaten. He had even arranged for dozens of people to surround the girl. In school, in front of the teachers and the dean, he even dared to commit such a violent act. His guts were getting bigger and bigger. If this continued, sooner or later, Su Yuan's reputation would be completely tarnished by this bastard. At this time, when she heard that Su Yuantek was going to send Su Yu to Heizhou, Shenxi was suddenly dumbfounded. Yuanzi, what did you do wrong? Can't we talk to him nicely? Yu is smart. He will know his mistakes and change. Know his mistakes and change. Su Yuantek's eyes were gloomy, and he stared coldly at Shenxi. I know in my heart whether he can change or not. Shenxi suddenly felt like she was in an ice cellar. Even after more than 20 years, every time she saw Su Yuantek like this, she was still scared, terrified. Chapter 875. Shenxi's hands and feet were cold. She was so scared that she didn't dare to make a sound. When she came to her senses, her son had already been dragged out. She immediately rushed over. Yuanzi. Don't be like this, okay? Yu is my only child. If anything happens to him, I don't want to live anymore. You promised me that you would let me take care of my son for the rest of my life. Now you're sending Yu to such a dangerous place. You're asking for my life. Shenxi quickly cried. Although Shenxi was also old, she took good care of herself. She looked very kind and gentle. At this moment, her crying made Su Yuantek look even more ferocious. Su Yuantek's expression was ugly. When the accident happened, he had two choices. One was to marry Shenxi. The other was to give Shenxi a sum of money as compensation and write off everything. He originally chose the second choice. At that time, he didn't have any thoughts of starting a family. Even if he wanted to marry, he would marry someone he liked. As for Shenxi, she was indeed good-looking, but she wasn't the type that he liked. Therefore, he gave her a sum of money and let her do what she wanted. Shenxi was very obedient. She left obediently and didn't pose any threat. However, 2 months later, she appeared again with a child. There was nothing suspicious about her. After she left that year, he sent people to secretly monitor her. The main reason was that he was afraid that she would collude with his political enemies. However, in these 2 months, she stayed at home. She didn't go anywhere except to buy groceries and cook. After all, he was a man. Shenxi was pregnant, so he had no choice but to marry her. However, he also asked for her opinion. Shenxi was anxious and said that she only wanted to raise the child. She didn't want him to do anything else. After all, it was just a formality. He also promised that she would enjoy all the benefits that a daughter-in-law of the Su family should have and that he wouldn't abandon her. For so many years, it had been as promised. Shenxi took care of the housework for him and attended various events. He gave Shenxi enough money and face. However, when it came to children, it was a headache. Su Yu couldn't learn it at all. The bad habits in his body were like a seed. As the years passed, they would take root and sprout little by little, growing more and more luxuriant. As a father, he had taught Suyu dutifully, but the problem was that Suyu was stubborn, and the more he taught him, the worse he became. Our Su family can't have such a good-for-nothing. He's the eldest grandson of the eldest son, and he's a disgrace to the Su family. If he did something wrong, it would be a disgrace to the old master and me. If the Su family was just an ordinary wealthy family, it would be fine, but the Su family has a 1,000-year-old tradition of making medicine. Firstly, he doesn't know how to make medicine, and secondly, he has no moral character. If he continues to cause trouble, he'll be letting down the Su family's ancestral teachings. Su Yuantek said coldly. He gave the two burly men a look, and they immediately took him away. A car had been prepared at the entrance, and even a private jet had been prepared. With people escorting him along the way, even if Suyu had wings, he wouldn't be able to fly away. Su Yuantek's words weren't without reason. The Su family and the Su family were of the same bloodline. They both had the same ancestor. The Jing family studied medicine, while the Su family studied medicine. They had been close for many years, and their ancestral teachings were exactly the same. The two families' ancestral teachings were strict. If a descendant's character wasn't good and didn't change, he would be removed from the family. Both the Su and Jing families had their own ancestral temples in various places. However, the main bloodline was in the capital. It was just that in this day and age, the matter of removing descendants from the family tree wasn't as important as in ancient times. Su Yuantek wouldn't have been so angry if Su Yu was just a mediocre talent. However, the problem was that his character was too bad. Chapter 876. Apart from Su Yuantek and Shin Shi, there was no one else in the corridor of the private ward. Shin Shi's eyes were bloodshot and she felt extremely helpless. She grabbed Su Yuantek's arm and said, "It's true that you, doesn't know how to make medicine and often makes mistakes, but isn't he your son? Our family doesn't lack money or power. Nothing will happen to our son even if he misbehaves. What's wrong with protecting him for a lifetime? Yuanza, for so many years, other than my son, I've never asked you for anything else." Shin Shi. Su Yuantek's eyes were gloomy. The Su family is rich and powerful, but all of this isn't for Su Yu to squander. He enjoys the convenience brought by the Su family, so he has to bear the responsibility of the Su family's descendants. He's a man, not a baby. Su Yuantek, do you really have to be so cruel? How many times have you done this? You want to kill my son every time. He's still my son. Do you think I'm happy? After Su Yuantek finished speaking, he lifted his feet and left, disappearing at the end of the corridor. Shin Shi felt as if she had been hollowed out. She leaned against the wall and moved step by step, her nails digging into the wall. It was her son who was injured, it was just a small matter. Who was the one who told Su Yuantek about it? Who was the one who did it? Shin Shi's eyes were filled with tears, but her hatred was strong. As soon as she left the hospital, she contacted Su Yu's friend. After asking around, her blood seemed to be flowing rapidly in her body. She was full of resentment. It was Jing Yunzhao. It was her again. At this time, Jing Yunzhao took advantage of the fact that it was still early to go out and meet the person in charge of the pharmaceutical factory that Li Xiaoyun had introduced. Her eyelids suddenly jumped and she had an ominous feeling. However, this feeling was not unfamiliar to her. After all, she had offended many people. What will come will come. Different situations call for different measures. It was useless to be nervous and worried. The pharmaceutical factory was hers, so she would naturally choose the person in charge. Li Xiaoyun, Pak Yuan, and even Xiang Jin had introduced a few people to her. She looked through the information carefully a few times and finally chose one of the people Li Xiaoyun had provided. This person's name was Qin Shui. He was about 45 years old and had worked in other pharmaceutical companies before. He was very capable and had stayed in the army before. He was a determined person and had a good personality. The other positions in Yunling Pharmaceuticals had already been confirmed from the list provided by Li Xiaoyun. However, Qin Shui was the one who gave the order directly, so she had to meet him personally. As for the other positions, she would have to wait until the pharmaceutical factory was on the right track to understand them all at once. After all, she did not have much time. The meeting place was near the school to accommodate her. In an ordinary restaurant nearby, a middle-aged man had been waiting for a long time. He was dressed formally and looked a little nervous. From time to time, he would look outside. He also did not understand why the boss that Li Xiaoyun had mentioned was in a university. Could it be that he was a professor in a medical department? Jing Yunzhao entered the restaurant and glanced around. Finally, she sat down in front of the middle-aged man. She had seen his photo before, so of course she could recognize him. However, Qin Shui was stunned for a moment. He said politely, "Student, I'm sorry. This seat is already taken, I know. I'm the person you're waiting for," Jing Yunzhao said as she poured herself a cup of tea. Qin Shui's mouth twitched. Were all girls these days so weird? "Student, uncle has some business to attend to. Can I trouble you to change seats?" Qin Shui said politely. "Hello Uncle Qin. I didn't introduce myself earlier, but it's not too late now. My name is Jing Yunzhao. If nothing goes wrong, I'll be your future boss. If that's the case, is there a problem with me sitting here?" Jing Yunzhao handed over her student ID. Her name was written clearly on it. Although Qin Shui did not know her well, he still knew her name. Chapter 877. Seeing the name on the student ID card, Qin Shui's old face twitched fiercely. He felt a buzzing sound in his head, as if he had received quite a bit of shock. "You're the boss of Yunling Pharmaceuticals?" Qin Shui couldn't help but pinch himself and ask in disbelief. Although he knew that his boss was a woman, he didn't think too much about it. He only thought that she was around 40 years old. After all, Yunling Pharmaceuticals was so big and was supported by the military. A boss with such courage should have at least a few decades of experience. He didn't expect her to be a student. Qin Shui's eyes flashed with suspicion as if he was expecting Jing Yunzhao to shake his head and deny it. However, the reality was the opposite. Jing Yunzhao nodded without hesitation. "That's right. You are a student of a university. How old are you this year?" Qin Shui couldn't help but ask. The moment he said this, he felt a little weird. "I'm 18, Jing Yunzhao still went along with it and replied. Qin Shui nodded and felt a little awkward. He seemed to understand why young Master Li wanted him. Young Master Li needed someone who was loyal and within his control. He had served in the military and later became the vice president of another pharmaceutical company. However, because he found that there were some problems with the production line of the company, he had a conflict with the person in charge and was almost sent to prison. At that time, young Master Li gave him the information of Yunling Pharmaceuticals. Rather than being the general manager of Yunling Pharmaceuticals, it was more like selling his body. He would work for Yunling Pharmaceuticals for the rest of his life. If he did anything to betray the company, young Master Li would punish him. He didn't deny his crime. If he didn't have this opportunity, he would have to spend the rest of his life in prison. He had no choice but to be grateful. Letting out a sigh, Qin Shui tried his best to make himself look more amiable. CEO Jing, you should have seen my resume, right? I wonder, what do you think of it? He was a middle-aged man in his 40s. At this age, he was old enough to be Jing Yunzhao's father. He wasn't mentally prepared for this, so it would be strange if he didn't feel awkward. I've seen it. I heard that you used a sum of money to buy equipment in your previous company and threatened the director of the pharmaceutical factory. In the end, the quality of the medicine produced wasn't up to standard. I was framed by someone. I had already discovered that there was a problem with the equipment and wanted to abandon it, but at that time. Qin Shui's face turned red as he hurriedly prepared to explain. Jing Yunzhao raised his hand and said, "You don't have to explain. I'm just telling you a story. You are trustworthy because I don't think a person who spends more than half of his family fortune on charity will take other people's lives as a joke." The information provided by Li Xiaoyun was very comprehensive. For more than 20 years after Qin Shui graduated from university, he would regularly donate a sum of money to the orphanage every year. The source of the money was clean. Not only that, later on, when he had more money, he supported many poor students. During his work, he would go to some poor places to investigate when he had free time and help to arrange donations. However, his own expenses over the years were pitifully small. Qin Shui had no parents. His wife was a very virtuous woman. His daughter had been influenced since she was young to do good deeds with her father. His family's life was only at the standard of an ordinary person. It was completely inconsistent with his position as the vice president for many years. His net worth was completely transparent in front of him. He was respectable and lamentable. Of course, although he was kind, he was serious and responsible in his work. He also separated public and private matters. Although he helped many people, he also stopped within his own ability. He had strong self-restraint. During his work in his previous company, he helped the company achieve good results. It was a pity that he was abandoned in the end. Chapter 878. She was running a pharmaceutical company. Although she wanted to make money and profit, there were some bottom lines that could not be touched. Although there were many people who were more ambitious and capable than Qin Shui, they were more dangerous. Therefore, in general, she was very satisfied with Qin Shui. "President Jing, thank you for your trust." At this time, Qin Shui also breathed a sigh of relief and said, "The pharmaceutical factory will be able to operate in 2 days. Young Master Li has also helped you to recruit the workers and company personnel, but we can't produce the douching ointment here." Jing Yunzhao had already prepared a contract and several prescriptions. The contract was a confidentiality agreement. Since these prescriptions were to be handed over to Qin Shui, some things naturally had to be signed. "These drugs to be produced have already been approved. You can be responsible for them. However, I don't want any problems to occur with these drugs, so Uncle Qin, you have to be careful," Jing Yunzhao said. The medicine they were going to produce was commonly used by the general public. The side effects were small and the effects were obvious. However, in order to promote Yunling's reputation, there was also a new type of painkiller here. She believed that once this medicine was released, it would definitely cause a huge reaction. Originally, the military wanted to get involved with this painkiller, but they were rejected by Jing Yunzhao. After all, the military had already taken a huge advantage of the douching cream. If even the painkiller was snatched away, then her pharmaceutical factory would suffer too big of a loss. Therefore, in the end, it was decided that the military would buy a certain amount of painkillers from the pharmaceutical factory every year at a favorable price. Although it was simple to say, in fact, this amount of money was even enough for the pharmaceutical factory to make a lot of money every year. Qin Shui couldn't help but be surprised. He seemed to have underestimated the little girl in front of him. Although she was young, she spoke clearly. Facing such a large-scale company, she didn't feel nervous at all. Her whole body exuded the pressure of a superior, making people unable to help but follow her pace. Compared to before, although it was only a short time, Qin Shui felt a sense of respect for Jing Yunzhao. He thought that from now on, he would have to work for others and have no choice but to live a life of desperation, but now it seemed that it was completely different from what he had originally thought. Immediately, he chatted a lot with Jing Yunzhao, but the closer the communication, the more amazing he found Jing Yunzhao. She knew a lot, especially in the pharmaceutical company. It was very obvious that she had put a lot of effort into it. It was very rare to be so outstanding at such a young age. Chapter 879. After Hua Tianxian said that, Jing Yunzhao calmed down. However, I'm afraid I'm just worrying for nothing. How can there be so much loyalty in this industry? Hua Tianxian laughed again with a hint of self-mockery. She was similar to Su Yu. When there was nothing going on, she had a lot of friends around her. Once something happened, everyone disappeared. Su Yu was personally escorted by his father. As long as those so-called friends weren't stupid, they wouldn't come looking for trouble. After all, only a fool would do something that was strenuous and not worth it. Jing Yunzhao patted her shoulder. That's because you didn't meet anyone who was compatible with you in the past. If it's now, Xingyue, Bao Bao, and I will help you if you need anything. Hua Tianxian pursed her lips and smiled. She raised her head. When did you become so mushy? Yunzhao has always been like this. This is called cold on the outside but warm on the inside, Ren Xingyue said as she tapped on the keyboard. Thank you for the compliment. Jing Yunzhao chuckled. Hey D immediately pounced over. Hey D is too mean. In comparison, Bao Bao and I treat him the best. We give him food, play with him, and even teach him how to speak. But after so long, he's still the closest to you. Hua Tianxian looked angry, but her eyes were shining with envy. Jing Yunzhao secretly laughed. Every night, she would pretend to sleep under the blanket, but in reality, she would play with Hey D in the space. Naturally, their relationship was different. By the way, when I was looking at the entertainment news, I found out that Palace of Eunuch will start filming today. Is your friend acting in this drama? Hua Tianxian asked again. Ever since Jing Yunzhao suddenly became obsessed with chasing stars, she began to pay attention to him in private. She also wanted to know what kind of girl could make a cold person like Jing Yunzhao become so enthusiastic. According to Jing Yunzhao's description, she looked up several dramas that were about to be filmed. Only the big production, Palace of Eunuch, fit the bill. Filming has started. Jing Yunzhao's eyes lit up. Hua Tianxian pursed her lips, feeling a little jealous. Jing Yunzhao thanked her and immediately turned on the computer to check. It was estimated that it would take at least 4 to 5 months to complete filming. In addition to the post-production, it would take about a year for it to be released. However, Xiao Haiqing had previously played many small roles. Even though she didn't have many scenes, she was still able to show her face. Now that she had gotten the help of Ling Lin's super manager, she believed that she would be able to gain some fame before the movie was released. Jing Yunzhao opened her blog and found that her number of fans had skyrocketed ever since she started posting some beauty recipes. Immediately, he posted a congratulatory message on Xiao Haiqing's TV series, and many people commented on it. After patiently replying to them one by one, he went to sleep. Hua Tianxian looked at her serious face and restrained her temper. She also went up to have a look. Looking at the photos of Xiao Haiqing, she felt like making friends with her. She envied this girl, but she wasn't jealous. In the past, she felt that it was good to have friends who could go out drinking, singing, and having fun. However, now that she saw Jing Yunzhao, her thoughts slowly changed. She began to look forward to having more and more people like Jing Yunzhao, Ren Xingyue, and Yao Baobao around her. Jing Yunzhao was like a mirror, making people feel as if they were looking at something they lacked. However, it was no wonder that so many people hated her. Hua Tianxian muttered in her heart and smiled. She also followed the blogs of Xiao Haiqing and Jing Yunzhao, their #1 fans. Her expression was a little awkward. After a while, she pretended not to know anything and washed up to rest. Chapter 880. Without Suyu, the rich young masters who had been taught a lesson by Jing Yunzhao did not appear. However, the ignorant women around Suyu were unrepentant. Although the campus was big, it was a narrow road for enemies. Jing Yunzhao would bump into one of them from time to time. Seeing how they were competing with each other, she could not help but feel speechless. Each and every one of them had big boobs but no brains. What a waste of getting into such a good school and having such beautiful faces. Jing Yunzhao, we haven't done anything to you yet. If you dare to make a move, then no one will be able to protect you. Early in the morning, just as Jing Yunzhao was passing by the tree-lined path, her path was blocked by 2 women. Jing Yunzhao really couldn't understand how these women's brains worked. In terms of martial prowess, they couldn't beat her at all, yet they still insisted on mocking her. Could it be that they thought that a few simple sentences would make her vomit blood? Besides, even if she took the initiative to hit someone, with Professor Mo around, she would not get a demerit or be expelled. The only person who could make her leave was herself. These people were so stupid that they were beyond redemption. Get lost. Jing Yunzhao stared at the 2 peacocks in front of her and said coldly. I'm recording right now, if you dare to make a move. The other party held onto the phone and took a few steps back before continuing, you better know your place. We're just here to chat with you. Jing Yunzhao, a wild brat like you shouldn't have any ideas about young Master Yu. When young Master Yu comes back, you better take the initiative to apologize. Otherwise, you'll be annoyed. Jing Yunzhao sneered. Annoyed? She was not the one who was annoyed, right? Jing Yunzhao sighed and walked over. She reached out and snatched the phone. She squeezed hard and the screen immediately shattered. Stupid. When the 2 saw it, their eyes widened in shock. Before they could say anything, Jing Yunzhao spoke up, if you guys continue to cause trouble like this, the next thing that will break won't be your phone, but your bones. Don't bother me. After she finished speaking, Jing Yunzhao threw the phone on the ground, shattering it into pieces before leaving. Why couldn't these lost lambs figure it out? If you like money, can't you think of ways to earn it? Why did they have to rely on a man like Suyu? Why didn't they think about what kind of life they would have without Suyu in a few years? But perhaps this wasn't the case when they first entered a university. The students who were able to come here were all outstanding students. However, in the eyes of some people, university was their ultimate goal. After entering, they would just be eating and waiting for death. In the eyes of others, university was just the beginning. Jing Yunzhao. Jing Yunzhao had just turned a corner and was about to head upstairs when a voice called out from behind her. She turned around and saw Han Nan looking at her with a fervent expression. Jing Yunzhao nodded politely and opened up a path for him. I just saw you and those 2 senior sisters. Are you all right? Han Nan asked worriedly. Didn't you see it? I'm not the one in trouble, Jing Yunzhao said. You're right. Han Nan laughed dryly as he pulled out another set of breakfast from his bag. I bought an extra set. Have you eaten yet? If not. Thank you, but it's okay. Jing Yunzhao still maintained her polite attitude. Han Nan was a little disappointed, but he seemed to have anticipated Jing Yunzhao's reaction. He lowered his head and pulled out a long box from his pocket. This is for you. After he finished speaking, he slipped away like a wisp of smoke. Jing Yunzhao was stunned for a moment. She didn't pick up the box and it directly fell to the ground. However, with so many people coming and going, it really wasn't appropriate. Only then did she frown and pick it up. The box had already been opened, and inside was an exquisite fountain pen. Chapter 881. The pen that Han Nan gave her wasn't that expensive, but it was very elegant. However, there was no reason for her to accept such a strange gift. She sighed and went upstairs. However, when she got back to class, she realized that Han Nan wasn't there. Jing Yunzhao had to go to Professor Mo's place, so she left the pen in Han Nan's drawer. Fortunately, she arrived early and there was no one else in class. Otherwise, it would be hard to avoid misunderstandings. By the time Jing Yunzhao returned from Professor Mo's place, everyone in class was already there. Jing Yunzhao was relieved to see the black box on Han Nan's desk. Jing here you go. Hua Tianxian handed him a bottle of water between classes. Her attitude was a little strange. What's up? Jing Yunzhao took the bottle, opened it, and drank 2 mouthfuls before putting it down. How about going to Xiao Haiqing's film set this weekend to visit her? Hua Tianxian coughed dryly. Her expression was a little stiff. Jing Yunzhao was stunned for a moment. Then, she noticed that Hua Tianxian's gaze was a little absent-minded, and she seemed a little embarrassed. She couldn't help but laugh. Okay. But remember to bring some gifts. It doesn't have to be too expensive, just ordinary ones will do. She wanted to go too, but Xiao Haiqing was just a newcomer. If she rashly brought a friend along, it might cause some dissatisfaction. It would be more polite to bring a gift. It was only because she was familiar with Hua Tianxian that she said these words. If it had been someone else, she would have directly rejected them. Hua Tianxian raised her head. It's just a gift. It's nothing. She wanted to see if Xiao Haiqing had 3 heads and 6 arms to be able to capture Jing Yunzhao's heart. Hua Tianxian had a straightforward personality. Jing Yunzhao felt that she and Haiqing would get along well. At this moment, Jing Yunzhao responded. Hua Tianxian looked very happy, but she deliberately restrained herself, as if she was afraid that others would belittle her pride. Yao Baobao and Ren Xingyue were also curious and wanted to tag along. However, Hua Tianxian knew that this was their first time visiting the set, and they didn't know Xiao Haiqing at all, so it wouldn't be good if too many people tagged along. Therefore, she directly refused and promised that she would explore the place first before deciding on it next time. Seeing Yao Baobao's eager expression, Jing Yunzhao and Ren Xingyue promised to help her get the signature of the big shot in the crew. Only then did they give up. There were still a few days before the weekend, and baby Yao could not help but mutter a few times every day. There were no classes on Friday afternoon. To avoid being nagged by Yao Baobao, Jing Yunzhao decided to go to Elder Su's place for the night. However, on the way there, he received a call from Zhou Meijun. Jing Yunzhao, I'm right behind you. Come and meet me. Zhou Meijun's roaring voice came from the phone. Jing Yunzhao sat in the taxi. He turned his head and saw that there was indeed a car following closely behind. However, because the road was crowded, he didn't notice that the car was following them. I'm not free. Jing Yunzhao did not want to waste time at all. You don't want to meet me? Then I'll get someone to drive over right now. Zhou Meijun's voice hardened. I just want to meet you. It's not a loss to you. Do you agree or not? Jing Yunzhao frowned. Are you crazy? Zhou Meijun, enough is enough. Otherwise, I don't mind ruining your reputation immediately. What do you mean? Do you want me to send you the photos of you with a few men? Jing Yunzhao said coldly. Those things had been taken a long time ago. However, because Zhou Meijun was fired, the value of these photos was not great. At most, it would only make the Zhou family hate her. Moreover, according to Ren Xingyue, Father Zhou was very disappointed. Therefore, it didn't matter whether these photos were released or not. Jing Yunzhao seemed to be able to see the tears in her eyes. I'm returning it to you. Zhou Meijun threw the phone back and said, Don't blame me. You asked for it. I can't do anything about it. Ha! Jing Yunzhao sneered. There was no other way. Could it be that she was forced? However, after thinking about it, Jing Yunzhao's eyes flashed. Ever since I met you, I haven't encountered a single good thing. Jing Yunzhao, it wasn't easy for me to get into a university. It wasn't easy for me to make my stepfather feel proud of me. Because of you, I lost everything. And her, Tao Guo. If she hadn't tried to drive a wedge between us, I wouldn't have ended up like this. Zhou Meijun said a few more words in a trembling voice. Suddenly, she fell silent. Jing Yunzhao scanned the surroundings and his eyes grew colder. When Zhou Meijun was speaking, her hand was always on her right. It seemed that she was holding something. Both of them were wearing gloves. In addition, there was a transparent bag on the passenger seat. There was something inside, but it looked very familiar. Chapter 883. Jing Yunzhao recalled the events of the past few days and became angrier and angrier. The bag contained everything she had touched, including the fountain pen Han Nan gave her, the water bottle she drank from, and the fruit knife on her dormitory table. There seemed to be a faint smell of knockout powder in the air in the car. The composition of the drug was rather special and was somewhat similar to what she had learned in the spirit jade. The source of this smell should be Zhou Meijun's body or the thing she was holding in her hand. No wonder she was so unscrupulous. She knew she had some martial arts, but she still dared to sit in the same car with her. It must be because of the drug. What do you want? Jing Yunzhao asked with a gloomy look in her eyes. Zhou Meijun was a little out of it. Her face was frighteningly pale, but she still didn't speak. After a while, the car arrived at its destination. There was no one around. It was an unfinished building. After entering, the man in the front seat got out of the car and carried the unconscious Tao Gu to a secret place. You take this and follow me. Zhou Meijun pointed at Jing Yunzhao with the spray-like thing in her hand. As the spray approached, the smell became much clearer. Who gave you this? Jing Yunzhao didn't resist. She took the bag and asked as she walked out. There were knockout powders sold on the black market, but their effects weren't that exaggerated. Even if you drank the drug, it would take more than 20 minutes for the drug to react. However, the spray in Zhou Meijun's hand was different. It was made of poisonous substances, including datura and various poisonous mushrooms. Those kinds of mushrooms weren't common. So far, there were only a few easy-to-find poisonous plants in her space. If she hadn't absorbed the spirit jade, the smell of the drug would have been engraved in her mind. She wouldn't have been able to smell it. She had never seen many of the old ancestors' medicines on the market. So far, only Grandfather Su would occasionally take out a few things that she felt familiar with. To put it bluntly, such a tricky knockout powder couldn't have been bought by Zhou Meijun. It was most likely made by the Su family, shouldn't she? Zhou Meijun stared at her nervously. Jing Yunzhao, I'm sorry. I can't help it. If you don't walk over by yourself, I can only use medicine. There was no doubt about the efficacy of this drug. Once she inhaled it, she would definitely collapse to the ground in less than 10 seconds. Although Jing Yunzhao was confident that he could directly snatch the item from Zhou Meijun's hands, after thinking about it, he still cooperated. The man placed Tao Gu on the ground. When Zhou Meijun walked over, she glanced at the two of them. Then, she took the fruit knife from Jing Yunzhao. Zhou Meijun's hands trembled as she closed her eyes. She knew exactly what would happen next. She didn't want to be so ruthless. She had never thought of killing anyone in her life. But 10 million. As long as she handed over the murder charge to Jing Yunzhao, she would have 10 million. And if she couldn't do it, she would be the one to die. In the past few days, she had been receiving all kinds of threatening phone calls and text messages. She knew in her heart that if she didn't do something, she would disappear from the world, just like what was said in the threatening phone call. She didn't know who she had offended, but she was sure that her life was in the hands of others. Even when she went out in the past few days, she would always encounter all kinds of danger. Although it was just a scare, there was no guarantee that the other party's threat would come true next time. Chapter 884. Jing Yunzhao walked over and stared at Tao Gu on the ground, her eyes flashing with deep meaning. Zhou Meijun, have you ever heard of harming others and harming yourself? Jing Yunzhao suddenly said with his back facing her. What do you mean? Zhou Meijun didn't understand. Just as she finished her sentence, she felt a sharp pain in her neck. Suddenly, a warm current seemed to burst out from her body. She fell to the ground, her body twitching and blood splattering everywhere. Zhou Meijun didn't know when the man had appeared behind her. There was something stuck on his rubber gloves. It was obvious that it was a fingerprint mask. The man was panting heavily and his body was trembling. But after he made his move, he threw the knife on the ground and took out a bottle of medicine from his pocket and sprayed it at Jing Yun. Jing Yunzhao had already guessed that Tao Gu was just a bait to deceive Zhou Meijun. Jing Yunzhao quickly dodged, but the medicine was very strong. The smell filled the air and spread everywhere. He held his breath and stepped back. The man took the opportunity to pick up the other bottle on the ground. He knew that Jing Yunzhao knew martial arts, so he didn't bother him and quickly turned to escape. Jing Yunzhao looked at the man's back but didn't chase after him. On the ground, Zhou Meijun's eyes were wide open. Blood was still flowing out. She would die in a few minutes. Jing Yunzhao sighed and didn't do anything to save her. Although this wasn't the wilderness, there were few people. The moment her throat was cut, blood gushed out. She had lost a lot of blood in an instant and it was difficult to stop her blood pressure. In the end, Zhou Meijun was too naive. Frame her for killing Tao Gu. She didn't think about it. She had no reason to kill Tao Gu. Although they had some conflicts, it had been a few months and they didn't communicate at all. How could anyone believe that she would kill Tao Gu because of a small matter from a long time ago? If she really wanted to frame her for murder, the best candidate was Zhou Meijun. Both of them had new and old grudges. Because of her, Zhou Meijun didn't get into a university. Once one of them got into trouble, the other would naturally become a suspect. And when he got out of the car just now, that man seemed to want to make a move on Tao Gu, but in fact, his eyes were fixed on Zhou Meijun. His body turned slightly behind Zhou Meijun, so his real target was naturally Zhou Meijun. Shen Qi's trick was really complicated. If she didn't use the medicine, she wouldn't even know that it was her doing. But Shinshik probably didn't realize that it wasn't a coincidence that she didn't drink the poisonous wine, but because she could smell it, but she went in such a roundabout way to frame her for Zhou Meijun. She wouldn't give her a chance to escape with the weapon, right? The police should be arriving soon. What would that man become then? An eyewitness. And Tao Gu, Jing Yun Zhao suddenly laughed coldly. She wasn't bad at scheming. How could she not figure it out? Tao Gu was most likely being used by someone. When she woke up and saw the dead Zhou Meijun, she would definitely lie whether she was willing or not. This lie was most likely to be that she vaguely saw Tao Gu kill someone and became the most crucial witness. Sure enough, less than 2 minutes after the man ran away, Jing Yunzhao heard the sound of police sirens. Even the police were prepared in advance. Lowering her head, Jing Yunzhao picked up the fruit knife with her fingerprints on the ground and threw it directly into the space. So did the pen and the empty bottle on the ground, which could prove that they were her belongings. Feeling that the police were coming, Jing Yunzhao walked into the empty building first. Then she entered the space and disappeared into the air. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.